Podcast.
All those steps sound correct to me.
Ooh, that little blue light in the corner means that we are streaming and we are live. All right, I am now clicked onto the studio tier list on Chrome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check the stream, make sure nothing went wrong when I clicked it. This is a great thing about streaming and not being particularly experienced with streaming is every single screen you click on could break the entire thing and you don't know why.
Yeah, and also anything could happen. Anything could happen.
Okay. Oh, Dan Parr's there. Can hear myself. Can see the.
Dan Parr.
Yeah, classic. Dan Parr's a classic guy.
Dan Parr, eat your Andes mints if you got them. Food of the stream.
Food of the century.
Would you call Andes mints food?
What the? Are you stupid? What the fuck else would it be? Is candy not?
I think it's more of a
Here's actually
treat.
something. Here's something I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
Is condiments food?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about like calling ketchup food as I do calling Andes mints food.
Okay, I'm gonna try something risky here. I want to be able to see your face, even though you can't see mine. Oh wait, no, I don't have to be risky. Oh, I'm so fucking smart. Hold on.
See, think about this. Like an acorn isn't food, right?
In a manner of speaking, yes. I mean, yeah, I
But
guess
you
an
can eat.
acorn's just much food as like a peanut is, right? You can, yeah, you can eat acorns, yeah.
Okay, well, no, but the distinction I'm trying to make here is between edibility and the food value.
Yeah, food ability.
Like I would say that condiments have a very low food value.
Food to food ratio. Maybe. Wait, what? What do you mean? But that's the only thing you do with them. Acorns have
I'm
other
just,
value.
well,
Chat,
yeah, you could.
chat.
The,
Dan Parr, what do you think?
there's different value sliders, right?
Sure,
Do you understand what I mean?
sure, buddy. Yeah, sure.
I'm also gonna pull up the stream so I can be checking out the chat and things
Yeah.
as we're
At everyone.
This is the benefit of not streaming with my laptop like propped up on a chair and a stack of comic books.
You actually have windows and options available to you.
Yeah, I got two monitors here.
That's so many monitors.
I got chat. I think that people who have three monitors have to relax a little bit. I think two monitors is plenty of monitors, personally.
Someone recently was kind of mad at me that I didn't have two. I'm like, I'm okay. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
I also have my laptop pulled up right now, so I'm gonna have my studio notes pulled up. 2024 studio research. Do you want me to send you this?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay, it's gonna be way too long to send in one Discord message, so it's gonna be a
Copy paste it into our drive.
no.
Okay.
I see. I'm a man of action. I decide when I don't want to do something real quick. This is going into. Okay, here's. Oh, even that part was too long. Shit. Well,
Try again.
let's cut it off there. Okay.
Now Cam says
There's
that
part
he
one.
has the announcements channel muted.
That's fine. I mean, yeah. I think that's reasonable because we don't do almost any backlot banter announcements in there. And if he doesn't watch backlog banter, which he's not a video game guy, that makes total sense.
Yeah, but Cam should be invested in everything we do.
I mean, I
in
don't
my
disagree with
opinion.
that. Yeah. Okay. Oh shit. Okay. All right. Let's see if this works.
Think about the percentage of time it would have taken to just put all this into
There
a
we go.
Google Doc.
How about that? You see it all? It's all all the information is there,
Yeah.
and there's
Okay,
a lot of
Tucker.
it.
Tucker, I think we should start this with you sort of going through what we're doing here today.
Oh wait. Oh shoot. Oh,
I
sorry.
just heard myself.
Yes, because the audio was playing from my laptop.
Oh,
Okay, no one is here in the live chat. Bo's asleep. I invited him to join us for a little bit, but he's like, he stayed up all night because he finished Silent Hill 2 late last night, and then he started Professor Layton in the Miracle Mask, and he played that all night. You know,
why not?
One of the options you could do.
1:40 in the afternoon, good time to be asleep.
I agree. Yeah, he went to bed about noon 30 our time.
Sure.
Okay, so The
Our time.
project,
Let's not get it fucked up. I,
like I meant like the royal hour.
okay, introduce what we're doing here today on the live stream.
Today's project is going to
Yeah.
be going through relevant video game studios from 2024 and placing them onto this S to Dead tier list, in which we discuss the what they brought to the industry, how we feel that they do, what they did, like did they sort of jump into popularity? Did they sort of lose some steam? And of course, the dead tier is if the studio was shut down. So that's where Firewalk's going. But we don't have to discuss that one. There's not much deliberation there. But I also have some publishers on here because like, and you'll see when we get to them. But like, Capcom or like Square Enix, like their internal studio structure is already kind of like unclear. So I'm like, well, what do I put for Capcom? I don't know what Capcom Group 3 or whatever that did Dragon's Dogma. But so there's it's going to be kind of bit by bit, and I have some indie studios here as well. We can kind of decide if we want to put them on there or not. But I've got a bunch. I think I've got a little over 30 of them.
Well, the indie studios will be easy. We're just gonna put them all in D tier.
That's true because they're not important. Because they didn't bring anything to the industry. All right, Abram. I provided you with basically all the research that I'd done for each studio.
Yes, I have all the data.
But where do you want to start? Choose one.
Let's start with. Okay, it's hard for me to see. I'm trying to, because I can't see your mouse on my Discord window, and I can only see part of it. Okay, hold on. Now I can see your mouse again.
Yeah, because it wasn't on the tier list.
Oh, well, that would do it, wouldn't it?
What?
Well, let's just start with GSC Game World. That's the top one I can see on this list here.
So GSC Game World, for those of you who don't know, are the studio that made Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. And they are I believe that's like the series they've been known for a long time. I think they made all of the entries in that series. They're a Ukrainian studio who have been struggling to work on this game after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. But I believe they relocated for the most part, and they've been working this game for like almost 10 years or something like that. And the game is finally out, and it had a little bit of controversy, but it seems like people are largely enjoying it.
The game has been in development forever, obviously heavily impacted by the war, and moreover, members of the development team were killed in action. So the context around the production of this game is very intriguing.
Yeah.
And the game itself actually was, particularly on Steam, quite a big hit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I should have looked that up. There was some. Yeah, there was some.
It was something like 1 million copies. Yeah, it was like 1 million copies in the first day or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the Wikipedia. Usually on like the reception one, they'll like put a superlative.
Yeah.
Release. The game was announced to be in Xbox Game Pass. It's another bit of the game's reputation or legacy that we didn't really mention. But probably pretty popular on there. Only releasing on Windows and Xbox, which is interesting. I'm sure they'll do a PS5 port at some point, but I'm sure that's
sure they will.
High priority for them right now. And it doesn't actually say anything about a superlative, but it was really goddamn popular, and it has what I gotta figure out how I'm reading my own shit. Has a 73 on Metacritic, as of now.
Well, here's my question for you, Tucker.
Yeah.
Here's my question for you. What criterion are we using here to determine where these should go? Because here's how my mind is sort of taking in all this information, right?
Yeah.
Stalker 2 is remarkable for its production context, for the resilience of GSC Game World. It has not only resonated with its niche audience, but found some larger resonance as well. However, the odds of GSC Game World really being any sort of player in the industry moving forward in a significant way, I think, is just so unlikely given the wider context where the team is at geographically, and the odds of there being a new Stalker game anytime soon, I think, are just so minimal.
Yeah, well, that's definitely true.
So I'm curious what really our end goal with this sheet is. Is this to come up with a tier list so that going into 2025 we have a sense of who to be paying attention to? or is this about sort of analyzing the
I
quality and impact of the games?
I think that this is a time capsule of this year's context.
Okay.
And I think each studio, as the reason I did all this research is I wanted to make sure we were getting as accurate information about the teams and their games as we
Yeah.
could, while talking about it, because there's so much information here. Like, I just want to have
Yeah.
some guidance. I think they should each be evaluated on their own terms. Frankly, like GSC
Sure.
Game World, I think I would be very comfortable in putting in an A tier, because in their context of making this game
Yeah.
that is well received, hits its audience very well, it is incredibly popular, one of the biggest launches on Steam from concurrent players, obviously the biggest hit for that studio. I think that's another specific thing, like in the context of that studio, this is like the biggest game that they've done, and also for them in the context of getting this game done, even with the issues that it did have, especially at launch. It's impressive that they managed to have it happen in the first place, and
So we're
they contribute an interesting a global sense to the games
sure.
industry, a social sense to the production realities of their game, and so I think that is like that's the kind of studio that obviously they're in a bad situation because of just the political climate, but their commitment to making this game is like incredibly admirable, even if it's not a game I'm particularly interested in. And so I think that that's like this is the kind of studio that like you want to champion, I guess.
Sure. So we're really saying, okay, in 2024, this is how each of these teams
Yep.
performed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes, yes, and that's why it's
Yeah.
specifically 2024 game studios tier list.
Yeah.
Because like there are some studios that are big that had big games that carried over into this year, but like
Right.
they, I'm mostly talking about studios, or all basically only talking about studios that had new games released this year and impacted the
Sure.
industry in some way.
I would argue B tier
Sure.
for GSC Game World,
Yeah.
largely just because I'm also thinking about what we have
Yeah,
upcoming,
yeah, yeah.
and
You got to
when you
leave some
start to,
space.
yeah, when you start to, the story of Soccer 2 is so particular, right? And
Yeah.
that's incredible, but moreover, we're going to get to teams who have much wider and deeper and more acclaimed globally
Yeah, absolutely. Of
outputs,
course,
but
of course.
I think B tier is fair there.
Yeah, sounds good. Uh,
Ninja Theory is up next.
yeah. Yeah, this is kind of. I think this is kind of like mixed up anyway, just because
Yeah.
I don't know. Tier Maker just like puts together all your images, like you figure it out.
Yeah.
So Ninja Theory up next. For those of you who do not know, Ninja Theory, the studio behind this year's Hellblade 2, no, Senua's Saga: Hellblade 2, which I need to make sure that I'm scrolling to this team's information here. Said Hellblade 2 released on May 21st. It has an
Yeah.
81 on Metacritic, and the main interesting thing about this game is that it was the first game announced for this generation of consoles, alongside the reveal
Right?
of Xbox Series X at the Game Awards in 2019, I guess it was. And it took a very long time to come out. They've been working on this game for years through the acquisition by Microsoft, the success of Hellblade 1. And it came out to an impressively little amount of fanfare. Not a lot of critical reception, very little engagement on
Yeah.
on the player side. A lot of people disappointed in it as a follow up. I personally thought it was a really impressive project, and I think a step up for them. But my opinion is kind of a drop in the bucket. And I think that Ninja Theory is an interesting one where we kind of have to discuss them in their context of like, I mean, what did they really bring to 2024? Is this a step up or step down for their studio? Like, is this the production timelines of this? The reality of it underperforming as a project? It's a very, very complicated thing.
To me, I think they're an easy C tier.
Yeah, that's what I was feeling as well.
And the reason I say that is because the they were at a real height.
Yeah, totally.
When you look back at DMC Devil May Cry into the two Disney Infinity games. But on a serious note, and in
What about
my
Kung Fu
view, I
Chaos?
actually really like those games. I think that the challenge Ninja Theory faced was, in large part, I would say, one of Microsoft's creation,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
was
absolutely.
being saddled with the sort of the role of having the most impressive flagship game to lead the narrative around
Yeah.
Xbox
Hmm.
into the next generation. And I simply just don't think that this was the game to do that
Yeah.
with. Obviously, Hellblade is an incredibly revered title, the first one, and the second one, in fairness, was received almost exactly the same
Yeah. Yeah.
as the first. So it's not like it's set down in terms of quality, but I think that they were asked to be something they're not,
Mm.
and the
Sure.
result of that
Context wise,
was
yeah.
more of exactly what Ninja Theory can deliver, but they were set up to do something else.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, I think that C tier is illustrative of sort of the position they're in as a studio,
Yeah.
not just in terms of the singular product they made. And I'm going to be really curious to see what they are tasked with doing next.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because I really don't think you set them down with Hellblade 3
No,
after this game.
I hope not. Even though I enjoy both games, and again do think that Hellblade 2 is, I would say, the better game. I actually really like the
Yeah.
combat quite a bit, and it is one of the most technically impressive games ever made. I mean, that's just, I feel like that's undeniable. And I thought that the art direction was fantastic. Like, they are a studio with immense talent, but
Yeah.
the unfortunate part about what Hellblade 2 for me signals is that they've been pushed their beyond their scope a little bit. I mean, Hellblade
Yeah.
1 was a game that was really impressive to be made by a independent studio. They self-published that game. And it looked on par with Naughty Dog's games and with Rockstar's games, like facial capture wise and performance wise and all of that. And Melina Jurgens won Best Performance twice for this same character. But because it took them, like, when did Hellblade release? 2017. That's 7 years in development for this
Okay.
game, and it comes out, and I think it shows that in some ways, but also this game is a really unfortunate example of high production value, leading to ballooning dev time and cost, and that not necessarily showing in the project in terms of scope. I mean, this is a 6-hour game. And that, I think, also it like disappoints quite a few people. I thought it worked for that, but it's not the kind of game that team probably should be doing. I think that they probably wanted to try to stand up to the biggest performance capture teams, but I think they need to refocus their vision just a little bit.
I agree.
Yeah. So C tier, I definitely agree with.
I'm really interested in Remedy here because you included Remedy. However, they didn't actually ship a retail game this year. They shipped
No.
some DLC,
Yes.
but they had a lot of news. So why, in your view, is Remedy important to this conversation?
Because I think this year, after the success of Alan Wake 2 last year, being nominated for Game of the Year, being very critically acclaimed, of course, coming out of Control just a few years before that, this year was them cementing themselves as a major player in the industry. Interestingly enough, even though they didn't release a new game this year. I mean, both of the Alan Wake expansions were received very well. Those in June and October, but they were firing on all cylinders in terms of new announcements, partnerships, being very open about their projects and the development process of everything that they're working on. I'll just read through everything I've written down here. They announced FBC Firebreak, a multiplayer Control spinoff coming out next year. They announced a partnership with Annapurna Pictures for Control and Alan Wake movies and shows, which is a very big deal, especially for a independent studio like that. They acquired their own rights for the Control IP back from 505 Games, which I think is a really big step for them, because I imagine Control 2 is going to be very, very big for them. That's a game that's absolutely gained a fan base over the course of the last 5 years. They canceled Codename Kestrel, which is a game that they were going to be doing with Tencent. It was a multiplayer game. But again, I see that as a refocusing of their strengths, and understanding where they can put their efforts. And again, I think being like open about, these are the projects we're working on, this is how many people we're allocating towards them, and even being open about, well, we have to cancel this because we need to reallocate those resources towards all these other projects, I think is something to be admired. And then to that point, they were very open in their financial reports about, as an independent studio, this is where the money's going, this is how many people we have working on everything, and being open about the fact that Alan Wake 2 is still just working towards being a financial gain for them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think they're one of the teams that I think uh, gained the most oxygen this year from a studio that was respected, but to one this year that was making news like almost every single month. I think is a really impressive growth for them as a team.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I have a much more skeptical picture of Remedy in my head.
Okay.
Reason being is that I I feel a couple different ways about Remedy. I
Sure.
don't think that the creative vision is in question at all.
Sure. Yeah. Of course.
We both loved Alan Wake 2. I'm
Yeah.
not crazy about Control, but I think that Control is nonetheless a very special game.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, but to me, I think a couple things feel like big anchors on the team.
Mm-hmm.
One for me is the number of projects they have on,
Sure.
because this lineup, what you have here doesn't mention, although it wasn't relevant, so it's not like you admitted it. But
Yeah.
obviously they have Max Payne and Max Payne 2 remakes
Mm-hmm.
in the wind somewhere.
Yeah.
FBC Firebreak is interesting, but I think it's fair to say that that game wasn't sort of met with the universal excitement
No.
that maybe an Alan Wake
Absolutely
or
not.
Control
Yeah. Yeah.
has stimulated. So what I see is I see a lot of like potential energy,
Sure.
but I'm not sure how much I'm seeing converted into like um, verifiable evidence that they are a
Yeah.
significant player, especially when you also contextualize the fact that they're still struggling to flip a profit on Alan Wake 2, which is
Yeah.
obviously, in my view, an important consideration in that I think you can look at Remedy as a team that's doing it right in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
returning, getting their IP back, not having such crazy budgets, really pushing
Yeah.
technical creative boundary. But I think that there's a lot of asterisks, in my opinion, and also making all these partnerships with Annapurna is obviously a slightly complex proposition when
Yeah.
the game side of Annapurna is basically dissolved or in the
Definitely.
process of being dissolved or reformed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I look at all of this
Though
together.
it is important to note, they're not
Yeah.
working with Annapurna Interactive. They're working with Annapurna Pictures. Annapurna Pictures is publishing, or Annapurna, I guess the larger company is publishing
Well, that's what's
Control
unclear.
2. And it's
Yeah,
definitely Annapurna
specifically that
Pictures
part.
doing the TV and film stuff. So,
Yeah, and I
which
think
is
that
it's technically a separate company, I believe.
and I believe it is too, and that's like the biggest positive win here, I
Sure.
think. But I
Yeah.
think when I take it as a whole, to me, I would struggle, especially in the context of this, especially in the context of other teams that are putting out a lot of great games. I would
Yeah.
personally struggle to put this much above B or C tier for me.
Sure, interesting.
Maybe when we get that next game that comes out, right, and it's
Yeah.
really big and successful, and it takes them up a notch.
Well,
But
yeah, I definitely understand that. I think it comes down to a difference of perception in terms of
Yeah.
what the energy means. Because you were talking about potential energy, and I think that's a great way to frame
yeah,
the reason I have them on here is because they announced a lot of things this year. They confirmed that there's a lot of things going into production that could result in them being a more major player next year. But the reason why I say that as a step up for them, and why I think argue for A tier for them, for me, is because that doesn't happen unless people are interested in what you're doing, in there being a lot of ideas, and them being very smart with their budgeting and with their IP right holding and things. Like, they've delivered on the last few games, and I don't think FBC Firebreak will be big for them. That is, I think, for me, probably even though it's probably the part of this I'm most excited for, like the biggest anchor for them, for me, is that game. I think will probably just go by the wayside. But I also do appreciate it as a diversification thing, as this is obviously a smaller team working within the bounds of their IP, trying to learn something a little bit different in terms of technology and structure and gameplay for that studio that I think is good at being diverse. I'm interested in seeing what this means as a multiplayer game from them, because they haven't done that before. And again, this is a snapshot for 2024. I agree.
Yeah.
None of this might turn out. There's a chance that none of these movies ever get made. FBC Firebreak could come and go like a fart in the wind, as I think it might do. They might not turn a profit on these games. Control 2 might be shifted over to another publisher. But as of the information we have now, I think that Remedy has a very exciting future ahead of them. They have
Sure.
shown a lot of strength in their last few releases, and they're building up to something. As the track record is now, they're building up to something. And as of 2024, with all the things that they put into production, it's like that's bold stuff that I do have confidence that they will, which I think maybe is the difference between you and me. I have confidence they will execute on all of these things, and seeing those signs, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, you've got all this stuff going on.
I think the reason I also look at it cynically is that if Alan Wake 2 was unable to turn a profit with them really going at it totally on their own, I sort of see a lot of this stuff as saying, okay, well, we need to fan our feathers a lot and attract these other, these investments elsewhere.
Yeah.
Probably also because, you can spin Kestrel being, and I'm not saying you particularly, I'm talking more about Remedy, can spin canceling Kestrel really however they want, and I'm sure that there's certainly a definite truth to the way they frame it, but also having a big contract like that with Tencent was certainly something that would have been quite useful,
of course,
at a time when their core single player stuff is not actually paying the bills to the extent that maybe it needs to. So I think really, to me, a middle ground between us here is B.
Sure, that's fine.
In that I think that they're setting up a lot of dominoes, but I think again when we get to some other teams here, they're undeniable, right? And I think that there's a world where Remedy is massive in 5 years' time, but I also think there's a world where they're really struggling. Incidentally, they sort of strike me as a platinum game style team.
Sure.
Where the talent is really there, but there's a lot of irons in the fire, and there's always sort of like a perilous financial component. And I wouldn't be surprised if there also develops this sort of difference between a Remedy A and B team with stuff like FBC Firebreak. But that's all vibes at this point. So
no,
ultimately,
I think that's very reasonable. Yeah. Well, I mean, especially because it would be the first time we've seen that. As far as I know, this is the first time that we've seen like multiple games from them in production at the same time. I mean, you can see the timeline from Max Payne to Max Payne 2 to Alan Wake to Quantum Break to Control to Alan Wake 2. Like that's a 3-4 year dev cycle. Teams focused on that and they put it out. But now, yeah, you're right. I mean, as of time of Alan Wake 2 finishing up production, of course, having all its DLC, it was Kestrel at that point, it was FBC Firebreak, Max Payne 1 and 2, and Control 2, all in development at the same time. And so I think you're right that, like, that certainly can be worrisome, that amount of ballooning, and we haven't seen them handle that before. So, yeah, I totally understand that. I think just on, like, a subjective level, I very much appreciate the kind of team that is willing to diversify and try projects of different scopes and different tones and different styles. While I think pretty clearly from FBC Firebreak, obviously being in the world of Control, like maintaining an identity. Like when you see the art direction of FBC and you see the weapons and the kinds that they're using, like, okay, yeah, that's in the world of Control, but it's like, they're expanding. So you're right. I think you tempered my future projection a little bit, and I think realistically so. So B, I'm very happy with.
Now, the next team here, Tucker, is Arcane Austin. Yes. Now, Arcane Austin is the first entrant into the dead tier.
Correct.
Do you think that there's maybe value in doing the dead tier now? Just putting everybody in there? Because I think they all fit into a wide conversation, right?
That's fine.
That I think is important.
Yeah, so that would be Arcane Austin. That would be Ubisoft San Francisco. That would be London Studio. Oh wait, did I skip Firewalk? Yeah, Firewalk. Sorry, I just love them so much. They're
alive in our hearts.
Not true. And Tango's an interesting one. I want to talk to them on their own.
Yes.
I feel like I'm missing one. Is one of these? Well, if we fucking run into it, we'll put it in dead tier.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. So I really like that you included the dead tier because I think it's
there's
important.
Another Ubisoft one here. This is Ubisoft Osaka, I believe.
Okay.
But I'll put that there.
What's Ubisoft Orlando doing on there?
They made EA Sports College Football 25. So I mean that's a big enough game that I want to talk.
Oh, sorry, EA. Sorry, I'm looking at little logos here.
What?
I thought that was Ubisoft Orlando.
Oh no, yeah, that's EA Orlando. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, well, I set the setting to the widest that they'll go, but EA Orlando is one line of text. I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. I sat there and thought about making a new logo for Nintendo Cube and for EA Orlando, but I'm like, that's not worth my time. I know what they are, so it doesn't fucking
Yeah.
matter.
The value of the dead tier, I think, is illustrating that the industry had a very hard year, obviously, and we'll
Yeah.
talk more about
Okay,
this.
there's another Ubisoft team, by the way. This is Ubisoft
Okay.
Osaka, and this is Ubisoft Montpellier. So there's
Okay.
3 Ubisoft studios in there.
Wait, hold on, because I got into hot water on Blue Sky for this. Montpellier is not shut down.
Oh, wait, I thought they
The
were dissolved
team.
into other teams.
See, this is what I thought too, but
Okay,
the
one of
team
these, I don't know which
within-
one of these because you can't see the fucking city. So
It doesn't
one of
make
the-
any difference.
Yeah,
Just take one of them off.
yeah, okay.
The team within Montpellier that works on Prince of Persia
Yeah,
was disbanded and put onto other projects like a
Sure.
Rayman game.
Oh,
The actual
wait, really?
team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was the Ubisoft actually talked about it. They said something stupid like we're in the exploratory phase.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I guess we're fine with that.
But yeah, so the team within is disbanded. And they're not working on any more Prince of Persia, but they're still around.
Sure. But I mean, if that team delivers a Rayman game, like, well, then really, what changed? I don't know. I can't tell.
Yeah. I think it's mostly just that internally they're not making any more Prince of Persia.
Sure. Except for the Prince of Persia game they're making at a different studio.
Yeah. So, yeah, but that said, the time remake's never coming out.
No.
Um, I think it's necessary to acknowledge that these teams that have been lost.
Yeah.
Because when you put them side by side, right, I think it becomes clear the extent of talent that is now out of the industry, or at least this formation of it.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about individual layoffs as applicable to the other teams that made it in a general sense.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at that side by side, big Bethesda team,
Yeah.
big Ubisoft team, two of them,
And
and then
Sony
two
studios.
PlayStation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
That's
could have put
significant.
Neon Koi on here, but Neon Koi never put out a game, so I don't really know what
Yes.
I'd say about them.
I think when you look at the
Oh
losses
shit! I don't
there,
have Alpha
right?
Dog on there. Alpha Dog Games.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't know who that is.
They made Mighty Doom for mobile. That's actually not a bad game.
Oh,
I thought it was
see.
kind of goofy, but sorry, Alpha Dog.
Yeah. You put that all side by side, and I think you recognize from every perspective the number of massive teams gone, the number of people out of work, and also if people are still having a hard time, because I think it can be kind of abstract, seeing these big numbers of people getting laid off and jobs lost and everything. Think about the fact that you're going to have one fewer Arcane games every time a new Arcane game would come due. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So every 3 years from now on, when you thought, okay, I can't wait to see what Arcane Austin's going to do, the answer is they're not doing anything because they're gone.
Yeah.
Same with these other Sony teams. Same with these other Ubisoft teams.
Yeah.
So you got to remember that from every point of view. You got to look at a list like this and understand what it means when when games workers are treated as poorly and as flippantly as they are.
Yeah, definitely. And I think specifically for London studio and Ubisoft San Francisco as long-standing parts of two of the biggest publishers in the industry, both of those teams were some of the most unique parts of their respective larger conglomerates. London Studio are the ones that made the fucking iToy, and they made Blood and Truth, and they made iPad, and like all sorts of wild, weird stuff.
Like Getaway. And...
Yeah, like they had a really rich history that like they were one of the longest standing teams in PlayStation, and they were working on a new live service fantasy game, which was certainly very different from them, and in my in our headcanons, I guess, kind of feels like what happened to something like Arcane Austin, where they're put onto a live service game, even though that's not something they have experience with. But that being a new IP that was in development for years. I mean, Blood and Truth came out in 2019, so they've been working on that new IP major game from an internal PlayStation studio for 5 fucking years. Like that game couldn't have been more than 18 months away. And in February, I believe, the team was shut down, or that's when it was announced. And that is a leg of PlayStation's history that I think is sorely missing at this point. Like the team that is willing to try new ideas and has a creative experimental side to them. And Ubisoft San Francisco were the team that did Fractured But Whole, and they did the Rocksmith games, and then they did X Defiant. And so obviously they have a breadth of types of games that they've worked on, but like that's 3 very different types of games, 2/3 of which were like successful and like well received, but shows a diversification to Ubisoft that you lose their their RPG roots in something like Fractured But Whole, and you lose the Rocksmith roots, like that's two parts of that company that are just gone now. And so it's just like
Exactly.
really disappointing to see a refocusing, especially. Oh, and we're gonna bring back this Ubisoft one that we put away because we're just gonna use this as the one that actually represents just Ubisoft as a whole. Because as we're talking about them after the
Yeah,
shutting down of San Francisco and Osaka, which I believe Osaka was just one of their support teams. I don't think they had specifically projects that they
I
did.
don't think so.
But Ubisoft had a really rough year. They had an exceptionally rough year with X Defiant releasing to no fanfare and then being shut down, and that studio being shut down, and
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed Shadows getting delayed out of the year, and Star Wars Outlaws completely underperforming, and them, not giving Prince of Persia the like space and like promotion that it could need to be successful. I mean, this was just a down and down and down year for them.
Quickly, Goska is in chat. Hey,
Hey,
thank you for
Costa.
joining us. Um, Tucker, I'd put Ubisoft in D tier.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was gonna do that as well. Yes, I just put them there in the center to like talk about. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I think that they caused a lot of harm, not only with the teams they shuttered, but also just by I think not giving a team like Massive the time they obviously
Mm-hmm.
needed.
Yeah.
By not giving a game like Prince of Persia the support it clearly needed, they just sent out a lot of good work to die.
Yeah.
So I think really from every angle, Ubisoft belongs in the bottom
Yeah.
tier here, and it'll be
Oh, and also
intriguing.
Skull and Bones was this year,
Yeah, so it'll be
which does not
intriguing.
help their case.
No, I forget, it might have even been Bo posting like you can get a new copy of Skull and Bones for $6
I
right
was
now.
thinking about
And so I think ultimately it'll be interesting to see how quickly Ubisoft rebounds from this. And
it.
I
Yeah.
think that a massive launch for Assassin's Creed Shadows and better support for whatever the hell else they put out next year could
Yeah.
do it. But as of right now, I think it was a really bad creative and business minded showing from Ubisoft.
Yeah. I think this is one of the worst single years that we've seen from it, from any major team, which is unfortunate because both you and I really liked Lost Crown. I mean, I think that's one of my favorite Ubisoft games, and you really found a lot of
Yeah.
love in Star Wars Outlaws, and so it's not like there
Yeah.
weren't like interesting projects from them this year. But each of these has an asterisk. Every single one of their projects they put out this year has a massive asterisk on it, and the shuttering of two massive teams and like restructuring whatever that means of one, is like you got to take that into consideration. And they don't even
Exactly.
have like when we get to PlayStation, that's a much more complicated conversation because they had successful projects released this year and they won Game of the Year, but like Ubisoft does not get any of that goodwill
Yeah.
from any of their sides. So we've got all of our Ubisoft out of the way. Unfortunately, my beloved Firewalk Made Concord, they shut down that game down after 2 weeks, and now their studio's gone. We talked about London. We talked about Arcane. I love Prey. I thought Redfall was bad, but they obviously have talent there, and so it's unfortunate we don't get to see them do a Prey 2 or they do not Dishonored 3 or something like they easily could have been put on that, and both of those would have been successful projects.
Yeah, or even a Redfall 2. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the principle of not one bad game shouldn't close your studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's illustrative of issues within Bethesda's management, right? And we'll talk more
Yeah.
about Bethesda's management when we talk about
Xbox.
some other Bethesda teams.
Oh, sure.
But next up there, Tucker, I think you have Pocket Pair.
I do have Pocket Pair. Aiden, do you remember who Pocket Pair is?
Yes, developers of Palworld.
Developers of Palworld, one of the biggest games of the year. This relatively small studio came out of basically
Yeah.
nowhere this year and completely rocked the game's sphere, especially early part of the year. I think this is easily the biggest game to come out in the first like 2 or 3 months of the year, and obviously have maintained some relevance being on. They're in State of Play. They're at SGF with a major expansion. PS5 release for that. Though they're also in hot water with Nintendo right now. I don't really know if any progress has been
Yeah.
made on that legal side. But Pocket Pair is an interesting one where I'll certainly be interested to hear your thoughts on this team. But for me, I'm pretty complimentary of them, and I would argue for probably a B tier. And that's a B tier coming out of I've never heard of this team before. I don't know any games they've made previously to really being surprisingly dominant force in the industry. And also for me, this is the controversial part. I actually have a lot of respect for the way that they managed to mix two very popular genres and I think make something kind of fresh. And obviously have great success and popularity in that. I think it's what
Yeah.
I think I have the information on here somewhere. It's like the second highest concurrent player count of all time. You remember that fucking week that game came out, and like every few hours there were like
Course.
another million sold, another 5 million sold. Holy shit! Like that was a crazy fucking moment for a team that had no standing previously. I think it was
Yeah.
a really really interesting year for them.
I would certainly agree that I think it was an interesting year. I will say, just to start out with, I think B tier is definitely fair.
Sure, let's do that then.
I'd go with B tier.
Yep.
However, I I don't put any faith in this team at all, personally.
For like their future projects, I can understand
Yeah.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
I think, and in fairness, I just checked. There's 107,000 people playing Power World right now.
Right now?
Yes,
What the fuck?
which most teams would dream of.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's an outstanding number.
Yeah, especially
think-
what 11 months from launch.
Yeah. And I saw people, there's some stories being like, oh, Power World's lost 95% of its
Yeah.
player base. That 5% player base is bigger than 95% of other games.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to contextualize the massive success of Pocket Pair. However, I am extremely skeptical of the team's ability.
Sure.
I think that Power World is a very shrewdly assembled game.
Yeah.
I think they understand that there's a sort of sea change in why a lot of people play games, what they're looking for. That, in my view, looking for above all else, landscape in which they can have fun with friends.
Yeah, totally.
I just don't know if that makes for a team that I look at and say, man, I'm really excited to see what Pocket Pair does next.
Yeah.
Now maybe they come out and they got another big exciting game and it feels a little bit more original and they're sort of taking less, and I don't mean that to insinuate like stealing assets or whatever some people do, but simply, using less placeholder shit, having a little bit more of their own idea for a game opposed to stitching stuff together.
Yeah.
To me, it's undeniable that they belong in B tier, but I'm skeptical of them. How about?
I think that's very fair. And again, I will contextualize this. I really want this to be a snapshot of 2024. And when I think about 2024 and a team that rose to like astronomical success, like unprecedented success from basically nothing. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to tell you the name of the. I probably would have been able to mention the name Power World in like late 2023, even though I'd seen the trailers for it. They're a big part of the landscape this year, and they did it well. I mean, I also like. To be fair, I like Bucky. He's like the team leader at Pocket Pair. I like him on Twitter. He's very transparent, talks a lot about stuff. From his social media presence, has a good personality. So I've been like keeping an eye on them, even though I didn't play very much of Power World. It's one that I find very interesting and emblematic of this year having, as we'll get to some other teams, a lot of very surprising like new teams sort of just jumping into the ecosystem. And I would like mentally, I guess I would argue for like A tier in terms of like how much their seat change shifted up. But B tier, I think from this being their first project, not really knowing where they're going to go next, I think is totally fair. So yeah, good stuff.
Tucker, you got Grezzo here next, and I'm very interested about this.
Yeah.
I'm interested to ask why Grezzo is here, and why. Again, I have not seen the full list here, so I don't. Man, I might be talking on my ass, but I don't think. Like we don't have like Eureka or things like that, do we?
Well, I could have put Eureka on there. I didn't.
I guess just like why break Grezzo out of the general Nintendo catalog? Same with Nintendo Cube. Like, was it just like the fact that these two games are probably the two biggest Nintendo put out this year?
Well, I mean specifically that, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
But also for both of them, and we can just talk about them both back to back because I think I have them on there for some reasons. I think it's both of their games that they put out this year, specifically Grezzo with The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom and Nintendo Cube. Also important to note that they were retitled this year from, and I guess, no, Monolith Soft became wholly owned by Nintendo. There was some other thing about ND Cube, whatever. Echoes of Wisdom with Grezzo and Mario Party Jamboree with a Nintendo Cube. I think they're both a significant step up in confidence from both of those teams. I think it's easily my favorite projects from both of them. Both of those games I think are quite excellent. And I think they bring an energy going into the next generation of Nintendo that I don't think they did bringing in to this generation of Nintendo. When I think about Grezzo or ND Cube as of like late last year or like 2022, I'm like, yeah, they make okay games, but like I'm not anticipating their next upcoming game. Like, yeah, I'll just see what they do. But like, I loved Echoes of Wisdom, and I think Mario Party Jamboree is easily my favorite Mario Party game. So it's like, I think they really, really stepped up. Both of them stepped up their game quite a bit this year with the games they put out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's important that Grezzo is more than I don't even know what the right word. Almost like a more utilitarian studio.
Yeah.
They were there to get the N64 games to 3DS. Mm-hmm. They were there to fucking get Luigi's Mansion over and do all kinds of stuff like
Utopia,
that. Right?
Link's Awakening.
Utopia, yeah. But to have them, take a more commanding role beyond, the work they did on a game like Triforce Heroes and 3DS for Echoes of Wisdom, I think is quite important.
Yeah, totally, especially for that series. 2D Zelda had been gone ostensibly for a decade, and to get a full new original one with lots of new ideas, I think like that to me is especially why this is here. It's like they not only made a 2D Zelda game, they made a new 2D Zelda game, and it was really original, really interesting, and now like 3 years ago 2D Zelda was something we're like, oh, I don't know, maybe, but now it's like, yeah,
right.
I 100%. I think they're working on that next 2D Zelda right now because I think Nintendo's very happy with the way Echoes of Wisdom turned out. I think they'll put a little more production value into the next one, and it'll be a massive deal in the middle of next generation. Like, this is them blossoming quite a bit into an important team for Nintendo.
Yeah, I would put Grezzo in A tier.
So would I,
personally.
Yeah.
Nintendo Cube, I have largely similar praise. I just think that the stakes are lower. I put them in B.
Yeah, I think that's
personally.
Yeah.
I think Mario Party Jamboree is really an excellent game. It's a game that I return to often. Even just being home for Christmas, I was playing with John and Laurel, and we're having a ton of fun. But they're making Mario Party, right? Yeah. Mario Party is a big success, but also we're talking about a smaller change in Nintendo Cube.
Absolutely,
I think,
from Grezzo,
compared to Grezzo, because Super Mario Party sold way better than this. It's a worse game in my view, but. So they upped their quality game, but I think Grezzo really evolved as a studio into something more capable.
Yeah.
Nintendo Cube just got better at what they already do.
Yeah.
Like every 2 years or so.
Yeah.
Tucker, I can't even read what this next team is.
This is Paper Games. Paper Games.
I don't know Paper Games.
They made Infinity Nikki. And Infinity Nikki falls into a similar vein as Pocket Pair, where this is a team that had been doing mobile games up until this point. And Infinity Nikki gets massive amounts of pre-release hype. I think the trailer's like one of the most viewed game trailers of all time. Comes out and I think over the course of less than a week has like 15 million downloads or something like that. And also was really, really well received. I mean, I was seeing on MinMax and on IGN and some of these major groups and publications saying it was one of people's favorite game of the year. And I personally played much of it myself, but it's one I find interesting in that it comes from a different team. I believe they're a Chinese studio, so that's another thing that I think is interesting. Sort of the globalification. What's the word?
Globalization.
Globalization. Yeah, the globalization of the games industry in terms of big games popular here coming from multiple markets. It's a massive step up for them, and they're a team with a game that is as high quality and as popular as Infinity Nikki is. That's a team that you bet your bottom dollar people will be like keeping an eye on, like what are they going to do next?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because obviously this Nikki IP has been around for a really long time.
Yeah.
This Infinity Nikki game is by far and away a much more ambitious game than what's come before. It's always tough. A lot of these teams that sort of stand to service a very specific thing, right?
Yeah.
Where they kind of go in a ranking like this, because I almost think that a team like Paper Games exists like outside of this hierarchy.
Sure.
Like they're off doing their own thing.
I agree, but I think I only agree because they're something we weren't familiar with beforehand. I mean, if this was like the third Paper Games massive hit that we'd seen, like I was thinking about putting MiHoYo on here, but we don't know anything about that, and there's not like a really interesting story to talk about for them. But like,
Yeah.
the HoYoverse games have been an established thing for half a decade at this point. It's like you know about where they fit into the larger industry, but paper games is to us incredibly new, and so I think that's why it feels like they operate outside. But like next time they put out a game, it's like, well, they're one of the big dogs now.
Sure, but I also just mean realistically, like Nikki, up to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have no context for that. Like it's,
Yeah, yeah.
and I don't, and again, I don't actually, I don't mean this at all as a criticism of the
Yeah.
team. I mean it more to say that there's a fun trend, I think, as like PlayStation and others continue to prioritize games, AAA games from around the world,
Yeah.
bringing them more into the fold of our sort of more Western and Japan
Yeah.
understanding
Yeah.
of game dev, that I think we just have to figure out where does a team like this fit in. And,
Totally.
and in my view, I think they fit into A, to
Yeah.
be honest with you.
I would agree. I think that from a quality level, that game's got the reception. Again, I haven't played it myself, but you know, all intents and purposes say that it's a good game. And it's a massive step up for them, and obviously very, very popular, and lots of downloads. It's one I don't know the financial structure of that game. I mean, it's got to have microtransactions, but like that is
It's free to play, right?
yeah, it is it's a like 100-hour open world RPG that's free to play, and that game looks really good. Great animations. Like also, I believe a producer or designer from Breath of the Wild worked on that game. Yeah.
Worked on the DLC, yes.
Oh, okay.
Director of the DLC.
Interesting, like
Yeah.
lateral move. I guess. Well, yeah, it's interesting. I was hesitant to say lateral move, but like, I mean, from like downloads versus sales perspective, Infinity Nikki and Breath of the Wild are actually surprisingly comparable.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a big deal, and also, I think you make a good point about like this and a couple of other games we're going to talk about coming up. The point I was making about globalization, like I want to know more about the wider global games industry, and having a game like Infinity Nikki, or coming up, I'll have like Shift Up on there, or even NetEase, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Like these Chinese, South Korean studios breaking into our spheres, I think is really important for diversification of the industry. As a team like a group like Ubisoft, or the bloated Xbox, or the bloated EA, or the bloated PlayStation start to like waver and falter, if you've got NetEase and paper games kind of supporting the industry from a different angle, it's like there's still some big teams out there putting out work that people really, really like. So yeah, I think it is a great place for them.
I'd also put our next team here, Treyarch, in A.
Oh yeah, totally, me too. This is
I don't even
Treyarch / Raven, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't have both their logos in there, but Raven. We're talking about Black Ops 6. Raven did the single player. Treyarch did handle the multiplayer. So important to know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it was just a massive launch, and I think the most captivating Call of Duty has been in a while. And obviously, this is helped quite significantly by Microsoft and by Game Pass. But moreover, I think that the gameplay innovations of Omni Movement and various things are just really key. And I've gotten a lot of people, myself included, and a lot of my friends who are lapsed COD fans, to get in and be intrigued. So I think that it's easy A. I don't think there's too much to say. They didn't make a movie about that.
Yeah, you're right. There's just a few more things that I want to preface of this in my mind being a very strong A. This is by far the longest development cycle for a Call of Duty game. They unfortunately sent Sledgehammer to the mines last year to pump out fucking Modern Warfare 3, which did not turn out well for them. But interestingly enough, with the I think close to all-timer success of Black Ops 6 in terms of reception and sales, and also it being the first game from Call of Duty launched on the Game Pass. This, I mean, hopefully sets them in a better direction for a healthy cadence of innovation and development time for a Call of Duty game, because this is a much bigger and much better received game than anything they've done since, frankly, Treyarch's last game in 2020, or when was Cold War? That was our last game, right? Cold War was 2020.
Yeah, that launched with the
new consoles, yeah. And so hopefully this means that, the next big Call of Duty game is also, innovative in some way and very high quality, and it gets a little more time in the oven, because as we're seeing the machine of, at the time, Activision Blizzard like kind of crunch down on the Call of Duty dev cycle, this I think is a bright shining light in that of like there is still some health and intrigue and innovation in the Call of Duty formula, and that's something that people really haven't felt for a very long time. So I'm that's a big step up for them, I think.
I agree. Machine Games is the next one here.
Machine the
And
game.
Machine Games. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're both massive fans of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. We did our big review recently with Charlie.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure if I feel like they belong in A or B. What do you think here?
I'm gonna say B, and I'm gonna say
Yeah.
B because I don't. It's interesting. I think they don't have a long enough history, like a deep enough history for me to really know what their trajectory is. I think this is a great step for them, but it feels like it's a continuation. Like this is just, I mean, I like the other Wolfenstein games. This feels like building on top of that. I don't think it's like way better or obviously not way worse than the other ones. I will say that the argument for them to go into A tier in my mind is that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle as a Bethesda game that is actually an Xbox game because they were acquired by Microsoft is massively important because I would say this is the best received Xbox published game in 10 years, if not more than that. I mean, this is a massive critical success. It's easily my favorite game that they've done in a long time from that, unwieldy conglomeration of developers. That I think is important for them as we start to see what this behemoth of Microsoft, ZeniMax, Activision, Blizzard King can do. This is what I want to see from them is great games, and that's something we haven't really been seeing. And so that would be pushing them a little bit more towards A. But I don't think it's a big enough step up from them or big enough change from what they did before for me to feel like that really like put them on a pedestal as opposed to what they were doing before.
Actually, I feel like you're arguing me into A, to be honest.
Okay, well, we can do it.
Because I think that you're underselling a little bit the ways that they both refined, but more importantly, brought in their skill set.
Sure.
On a design level in this game.
Sure.
With the bigger environments, the more immersive simulation aspects.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot here that pushes their skill set further than what they were doing with the Wolfenstein games, which I also love. And I also like your point here about the reception, because I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Especially at a time when Bethesda is having a lot of challenges. Not only just speaking about, this being one of the best received Microsoft games in the global sense in a while, but even, just look at Bethesda.
Yeah, totally.
The number of issues they've had. Starfield, a divisive game, no doubt, right? And so, obviously the issues they had with Tango earlier, Bethesda, and we'll get to that, but I think Machine Games is sort of the beginning of, I think, sort of a reevaluation of the image of Bethesda that's going to be helped a lot by Doom: The Dark Ages. And maybe apparently a Elder Scrolls 4 remake.
Yeah. That'd be really interesting.
but I think the Machine Games really did deliver quite strongly, and so I think I actually think A is good here.
Absolutely.
I also can't read this next one, to be honest with you.
This is
What's
Strange
this next
Scaffold.
Game? Oh,
This is Strange
now
Scaffold.
can I say something crazy here,
Go
Tucker?
ahead. Yeah.
I'm gonna put them in S.
I think that is totally warranted. You want to give your? I've been giving my tirade first, and I feel like I've sucked a lot of the air out of like you being able to also contribute to the conversation. So I'll let you go first sometimes as a little treat.
I think that Strange Scaffold is, with receipts, what Remedy could be, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
Because Strange Scaffold, for people who aren't familiar, is Xavier Nelson Jr.'s studio.
Yeah.
And this year, Strange Scaffold put out Click Holding, and I Am Your Beast, and Life Eater.
Yes. And the El Paso Elsewhere PS5 port.
They've been very, very busy.
Yeah.
And I Am Your Beast in particular was really a quite a successful one.
Awesome.
I love that game. It fell just outside my top 10 for the year.
Yeah.
I think that's a really exceptional game. And Click Holding is really interesting too.
Totally.
I think that Xalavier does a lot of things that are really fascinating and that are explored in great detail in the award-winning Backlog Banter series Dev Dive that everyone should listen to. Keeps moving through projects. Doesn't get too bogged down. It comes up with a nice, exciting idea, executes on it to its logical conclusion, and moves on. And we're seeing dividends in that, not only in the catalog, of games, but also in the ways that these projects are sparking imagination and getting deals like the film,
Yeah.
like the El Paso Elsewhere film with Lakeith Stanfield, which is amazing.
Yes, I mean
And I
that's
think
insane.
when you're creating like that, a game
Yeah.
like Life Eater, it's not nearly as well received as the other two games or as big,
Yeah.
particularly as I'm Your Beast, but it doesn't really matter. When you
Yeah.
make it sustainably and you're on to the next thing, there's just such a great spirit of creativity.
Yeah.
And obviously the games that Xalavier is making are so small and they cost so little. It's not a directly analogous model to AAA, but I think it can be if you scale up
Mm-hmm.
all the factors involved, right?
Yeah.
Instead of making a bunch of games in 3 months, make a bunch of games in 2 years that
Yes.
have half the budget of your peers, right? So I think that Strain Scaffold in both in the business and in the creative is in my mind really a blueprint
Yeah.
for how a lot of other developers of any scale should be operating.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is a good example of continuing a trend in the positive way that you, I think to your point earlier, mentioned that Remedy didn't have the receipts yet. Strange Scaffold mostly came to prominence, and certainly the first time I heard about them last year with El Paso Elsewhere, which was easily their biggest hit, nominated for awards, now has a movie adaptation in the works in some capacity, got a PS5 port this year, and that game was big almost a year ago at this point. But they were able to carry that energy into 2024, riding the back of their biggest success of all time with other games that kept them in the conversation. Clickholding in our circles as a totally bizarre indie game was really fun to talk about and see come to fruition in such a short time period and try something totally new. And kept them in the conversation. And then, right after they announced Clickholding, they're like, oh yeah, and by the way, a new game called I Am Your Beast is also coming out in about 3 months. And then that game, I think, very easily continues the awesome legacy of El Paso Elsewhere. And another interesting thing about that is they delayed that game for about a month because they're like, it wasn't even like the game's not ready. It's like, or no, it was. It's like, we don't want to pressure our team. Like, we don't want to crunch. We don't want to like force them to get it done when they're not happy with it.
Yeah.
We'll delay it by a month, not for any like specific crazy reason, but like it's the right thing to do. And like, there's a lot of notes that I think the larger industry can take from the way that Xalavier manages his teams, and where they're continually delivering with a lot of stuff, and specifically also two other things that one thing that happened recently is there was a documentary that was made about a game that they made that didn't work and that didn't come out and was canceled. And I watched it. It's a what's the guy's name? It's not Spaghetti. It's something like that. What the fuck is the
Ready Spaghetti?
No, the Bass Reeves Can't Die. I'm just gonna make sure I get the YouTuber. Bass Reeves Can't Die. Document Noodle. Okay, I was close. I was fucking close. That's why I said Spaghetti. This YouTuber Noodle did a hour-long documentary interviewing everyone involved with a Strange Scaffold game called Bass Reeves Can't Die, and the development process of it, and the history of it, and they show Discord receipts and recordings of Discord calls and where it goes wrong and dev timelines and trying to get things funded. And it's such an interesting look into structure. And then the ultimate thing is like, man, this is such a cool game. We would love to have had it done, but it didn't work out, and that's okay. Like, that happens sometimes in development, and that vulnerability, I think, is and also part of the reason why I compliment Remedy with like showing all their fucking financial stuff is like that kind of vulnerability I think is really important for the games industry to see what works, what doesn't, how can other people learn from it.
Absolutely.
And also they announced 2 other games this year that are coming out soon next year, one of which is a TMNT tactics game, and also Creepy Dinosaur Redneck Mansion 3. And also they have this co-op kaiju cooking simulator, so
that's the one I'm really interested in personally out of all of those.
But they just fired on all cylinders this year, and I thought it was remarkable. Absolutely remarkable.
I agree. Both Clickholding and I Am a Beast in my top 20 for the year.
Yeah, yes, I think me too. Yeah, great games.
EA Orlando.
Yeah.
You know, Tucker, this is a really interesting one because EA Orlando is like the game is the game is so much more than the team, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Now, obviously, it's the team that makes the game, but it's interesting, and I'm glad that you've done this here because you almost, at least in my head, I think about these annualized, and I'm positive college football is going to be annualized.
Yes.
Um, these annualized sports games is just like games that just sort of are
Happen. Yeah.
exist, like they just
They
happen,
just like
right?
seep out of the ground, and you're like, ah, here's the new Madden.
But in reality, having this team EA Orlando
Yeah,
here to make a college football game every year is huge, and I think that they should probably be an A tier.
I agree. Yeah. I think that this, for me, and again, I want to be very transparent about, I'm putting these on, it's my vibes list. Obviously, it's our collaborative vibes list, but
Yeah,
this is EA Orlando specifically. This is not EA, the larger company that had layoffs this year and things like that. EA Orlando as the development team that delivered EA Sports College Football 25 and Madden NFL 25 this year. I think this is a
I
big.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's the same team. They they jumped into my mind sphere. And so obviously that's kind of what we're talking about here with Pocket Pair and paper games. Like, these were teams that people knew if from a previous project, but it's similar with EA Orlando. I was similar to you of like, oh, Madden just kind of happens. I couldn't really tell you who makes it, whatever. But with the success, massive success, biggest, I believe it's the highest selling game of the year. Like, it's the highest selling sports game of all time, I believe. So like that unprecedented success of EA
Yeah.
Sports College Football 25, which I love saying the entire name of. Actually, it rolls off the tongue in quite a nice way, which is surprising for something as clunky as it is. It shows that there is a hunger for different kinds of games in the industry. We had very close personal friends that played an absolute asinine amount of this game. It seemed like it was very high quality, and people are really happy with it. From a series that had been dead in limbo and in weird legal things for a decade, they made it work, they delivered, and they reaped the benefits from it. And obviously, it will be annualized, but especially as the first one in this now rebooted series, it feels like something fresh. And so that's why this is the time capsule of 2024. EA Orlando put out a second football game this year, and it blew away everyone's expectations and blew away the sales charts. And like, they should, I mean, even if it's as simple as being on our tier list, they deserve props for that, because that's not easy to do.
Absolutely. It's like a blooper team.
Yeah.
What do you make a blooper team?
Bloober team. This is an interesting one,
Yeah, I agree.
because Bloober team, I think, falls into the Remedy camp.
Let me ask you a question,
Yeah,
actually.
sorry. Yes.
Let me ask you a question. Would you say that the reputation Bloober has,
Yeah.
which certainly pre-Silent Hill 2's release was,
Yeah.
I would say, majority negative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that
we would make fun of Bloober team? We barely even
Yeah.
knew what their games were.
Do you think that the release of Silent Hill 2 has, to a significant degree, changed that
100%
perception of them?
Absolutely. I mean, this is their biggest game by sales. It is their
Yeah.
biggest game by critical reception. And it also is like awards wise and recognition wise, a recognition of a team that does have talent, but that was putting out games that weren't very good previously. And to see a game like this that is as critically successful, especially as it is like unearthing a hidden talent from like you're like digging in a bunch of stuff. Like, what the hell is this? And this is, again, through my eyes. Bloober Team, not a team. I played some of their games. I didn't think they were very good before this. I played and absolutely adored Silent Hill 2 Remake. I think it's one of the most impressive projects of the year. I think it's going to be a total reinvention for Konami that can now put Silent Hill back on the map and compete with Resident Evil, which they haven't been able to do for almost our entire lifetimes. And I would guarantee that Bloober Team will be a massive part of that. They have, and also they announced a new project for next year called Chronos: The New Dawn, which I think just from a teaser trailer looks really interesting and totally unique from them. And this is a step up from a team that I would have put in D tier a year ago, when people were saying
I
that
agree.
James Face looked bad and they're going to ruin Silent Hill 2, which is one of the best games of all time. And they delivered their own vision. They brought back Silent Hill. They're part of resuscitating Konami from the fucking dregs of the industry. And now they're a team I'll get Chronos day one. If it gets good reviews and is clearly in the same like talent camp as Silent Hill 2, I'll get that game day one. I'll be looking forward to. I'm sure they're working on another Silent Hill game right now, like that same team.
Yeah.
And it's like, I I have a lot of confidence of them from. I mean, obviously one of my favorite games of the year.
Yeah, I agree. Well, how does B tier
Yeah,
strike you for that?
that's fine. I think they need to be held down a little bit by their
Yeah.
legendarily terrible track record, but they're
Well,
working their
that's
way
sort of
up.
my feeling because I would have also put them in D tier in a general sense pre the release of this game, and I
Yes.
just think that again it's a snapshot approach, right? It's
Yep. Hmm.
2024, and in that context, I think it's a huge step up. But I don't necessarily know if I feel confident that this Bloober team is just
Yeah.
like they're fucking up.
Of
They're at the
course.
top of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
genre
Yeah.
now. I
Yeah.
just don't know if that's necessarily true.
Yes.
So I think B tier is fair.
Absolutely.
Also shout out Joe Richards. Hey Joe.
Hi.
Evening. Gave a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
salute. I'll do a little salute here.
Evening if you're in like a bad place, but
I mean it's evening for me. Well, this 5:45. That's evening. What'd
who
you
the hell
say?
knows? Who the hell knows? Yes.
Bloober team came out and said we're done with releasing bad games, and I don't know if
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
self-awareness is great or just a joke. Um, I think yes is my
I
answer.
think it's just good PR is what it is.
Yeah, I
Or at
mean
least
they're not
funny
stupid.
PR.
um, Tucker, we got FromSoft here. I think you just drop them an S.
I think so. They delivered one of the most successful and revered DLCs of all time this year. Changed
Yeah,
the industry's nomination tactics because their game was just that goddamn good. And they also announced a new game for next year. And specifically, another thing, they acquired the rights to Elden Ring from Bandai Namco, and so now they're much like Remedy, more in control of their own future. I think those two teams in specific, it's like we obviously they make great games. They're leading the industry in terms of quality, but it's good that they're having a stronger control over their own future now and showing that not everything has to fall under the, let's just say 10 or so major publishers wresting
yeah.
control back from Tencent and from Bandai Namco to be a little bit more in control, I think is good. And also, I mean, Miyazaki talked about the fact that, and this is another thing we really have to commend them for, he's trying to raise other talent to make sure that he's not the only one at the studio. They're starting
Right.
multiple teams. They're doing different genres that are in the works. Like, I think that we're in an already legendary run of FromSoft games, but Elden Ring into Armored Core 6, into Shadows of the Erdtree, into Elden Ring Night Rain next year, into, I would assume there's another game the year after that. Like, man, this is like they're the ones to look at.
I also like your last point about Kai.
What the fuck are you talking about? Oh, is that one of the things? Wait, I wasn't looking at my own notes here.
On your notes here, you got Kai streams Elden Ring and Bloodborne.
Oh, sure. Oh,
The,
interesting.
re-
Yeah. Forgot about that.
the reason I like that a lot is because I really think that an element of this the larger conversation about the year are the games that resonated with people, not just in a numbers sense, but in a deeper sense. Like, Pocket Pair has an enormous player base, right? But I wouldn't say that there's a fandom
Yeah,
the way
yeah.
that FromSoft has. And I think that's very hard to cultivate. I think that's even harder in some ways than just finding a massive
Yeah.
audience. And so I think that they deserve a lot of accolades from that perspective. And I think that they are. I think you can make an argument that From Software is the studio with the most cachet
Sure.
behind its name in working right now. Period.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. And also because even though like on a quality level, you put them in the conversation with Naughty Dog, with Rockstar, and with some specific Nintendo teams. Like I'd say that's
Yeah.
like the Mount Rushmore of like game developers there. From Software, out of those teams, they're the ones delivering a consistent budget and consistent quality and consistent releases, much smaller time scales, experimenting a little bit more. Naughty Dog and Rockstar are like, you might see them once a decade. And it's going to be one of the best games of the decade. But From Software delivers the best game of the decade 4 times a decade because they have a much stronger sense in their management of teams and team sizes and scope that you gotta manage things down a little bit and experiment a little bit and try new things. So, yeah, good stuff.
I'm really interested by Bokeh
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
I don't think that Bokeh can go higher than C,
No, I agree.
personally.
I agree.
Um, Man, I don't know. I really don't like how Bokeh was speaking online about what was it? Fuck. It was about yeah, shitting on people for not scoring the game high enough, which was kind of weird. The game is not that impressive,
Sure, sure, sure,
really.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
It's it's very cool that God, what's his name? What's his
Keiichiro
name?
Toyama.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's back with a new IP. I think that's very interesting, but and I like that, people have adopted this sort of idea that it is a sort of
A future
cult
cult
classic,
classic. Yeah, yeah.
future cult classic. Yeah, Joe, thank you. It was in relation to the IGN review. But I feel like if your game is immediately out and people are like, yeah, this is going to be a cult classic in a while, I think that to me sort of indicates that there's been a misstep here and you didn't quite land.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I think C tier is okay
Yeah.
for
I
this.
think there's not much to talk about, but again, this is
Yeah,
a 2024 snapshot. Keiichiro Toyama, creator of Silent Hill and Gravity Rush, put out a new game this year.
Siren.
And Siren, of course, yes, but I wanted to reference the one that people know. As I was trying to hype him up as a interesting creator in the industry. I haven't played Siren. I don't know. I might like those games. He started his own studio
Yeah,
after I mean I think it was actually after Sony shut down Japan studio and he couldn't work with Team Gravity anymore. And so he started his own studio and made the kind of game that he wanted to make. And it's an independent studio on a smaller budget, and it obviously feels that way. I think that's to be commended, but we also have to factor quality in. They delivered his vision, but his vision also was kind of a clunky game that people aren't really connecting with. And so
yeah,
I would be interested to see if this studio is able to build up a repertoire like he has. But Slitterhead is kind of it's a funny game. It's a easily forgotten game. It's a curiosity that the guy that made Silent
yeah.
Hill went on to I don't make fucking Slitterhead. Like it's not a major moment for I would
No,
say it's actually I mean even though it's like his first time making his own game with his own studio, I think it's probably the low point of his career. Because Gravity Rush, Silent Hill, and Siren are three series with cachet and impact on the industry, and this is not that.
yeah. Would you say that is a major developer's minor majestic moment?
I would. I was actually talking about Major Minor's Majestic March with my friend Isaac the other day, and trying to explain to him what it was, and I kept going, "Keep on marching," and he's like, "Stop, stop." But I said it probably 10 times that night, so I understand.
Joe also is just talking a little bit more about that controversy, saying it's about the IGN review and how IGN said we need to champion lore a bunch of games before Bokeh came out. With Slitterhead and complained that IGN didn't give them a higher score. It was really weird. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Next up is NetEase, and obviously in this case we're talking about Marvel Rivals.
Yeah.
I think they probably also go in A.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, that is very interesting. I think they're kind of a combination of
Yeah.
Pocket Pair and paper games, where there are a team that I think I had gently heard of in the past for doing some mobile games, but I think they were explicitly only a mobile game studio at that point, and they're also a Chinese studio, so again to the globalization thing. But they where I draw in Pocket Pair is they alongside obviously Marvel games targeted a hole in the industry.
Yeah.
They're like, Overwatch was the biggest goddamn thing on the planet almost 10 years ago. It has fallen off significantly. People make fun of Overwatch 2. It's not as big.
Yeah.
A quality game in that area, in the time in the industry when which multiplayer games and social games are massive, let's just do that. And obviously there is the Marvel IP to sort of buoy it up, but it's also a really good game. It's just like a really well-made game, and it also has its own ideas that build on what Overwatch is. It's mostly an Overwatch ripoff, but it has its own ideas that I think give it enough of its own flavor. But it also finally feels like Overwatch has like an actual competitor. I mean, we watched
Yeah.
everyone and their goddamn mother spend the last 7 years making an Overwatch ripoff and seeing all of them fail time and time and time again. And suddenly, NetEase is like, well, we're just gonna do like just actually Overwatch. But and obviously they made a very well-made game, and they found massive success because of it. I mean, I easily see this becoming a game that consistently gets character reveals on the major stages, and and is probably streamed quite significantly. Like this is one I feel like is here to stay. And again, talking about steps up from a team that only made mobile games before this, and I think mostly games that were exclusive to China. And so like this is their coming out moment to like one of the biggest degrees.
Everyone wants to fuck Squirrel Girl.
And yeah, there's a lot of that going around. A lot of that going on. And everyone hates Jeff and compares him to Hitler. But I think that's also another interesting point where where memes about this game, because of its popularity and identity, Squirrel Girl and Jeff the Land Shark were not characters of any cachet before this game, but now those are maybe the two most popular characters from that game, because they have obviously interesting designs. I think all the characters are actually quite well designed. I love the art style of this game. But they were able to pull in interesting characters from Marvel and give them a platform with interesting mechanics to where people are like, now, and like, I remember hearing like, oh, they've got plans for Jeff the Land Shark in the MCU's future. I'm like, they weren't thinking about that before this game popped off. No fucking chance. No shot in hell. But like, this is going to have some interesting impact on like the future of Marvel in the wider sense, which I think is really interesting.
And they're probably going to move up to S tier then when Tom and Jerry Chase comes out.
Is that another game they have announced?
Yeah.
Tanner says, we don't compare Jeff to Hitler. He is Hitler. My bad.
That's fair enough. Thank you, Tanner.
Next up, Capcom. Talk to me about Capcom.
Next up, Capcom. So this year, Capcom released some games, Tucker. Do you know that?
Capcom, again, we're going to talk about the publisher and like the wider slate of games that came out this year, which actually really wasn't that much, which is I think easy to talk about. But because they don't have like named internal teams, so it is very difficult to like pin things down. So we're just gonna be talking about Capcom. Continue. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
Dragon's Dogma 2, King's Path of Goddess, Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, and Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection were their releases this year, and obviously they announced an Okami sequel and Onimusha Way of the Blade at TGA. I think this is a really good year for Capcom.
Absolutely.
I think it's a B tier year for Capcom, though.
Okay, interesting. Sure.
I think that again, we're talking about the context of these individual teams, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Capcom has had bigger years. And they had a bigger year last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
They had no S tier Capcom release this year.
Yeah,
and I think that when you're looking down the barrel of Monster Hunter Wilds, they're only an S game for next year, but there'll certainly be something else as well. Yeah. That's already a. Oh yes, exactly. It's almost done. That game is going to have a 9-month development cycle.
Yay!
I think
and director, they lied. It's not what's the fucking guy?
Kamiya?
It's not Kamiya. It's actually Xavier Nelson Jr. Oh. Strange scaffold. Sorry. I bungled my own joke by not knowing his fucking name.
I just think that Capcom is doing so well that you look at a year like this of really good games, but largely more niche titles, and I don't think it sits on the level of a 2023 or what they're gonna do in 2025. So ultimately, I think a really good year from Capcom. Obviously, I love Dragon's Dogma. King's Dogma I thought was really cool, though not really for me. Yeah. And Marvel vs. Capcom was just a really easy win. But even when you look at the announced games, right, a lot of their time this year was spent hyping up Monster Hunter Wilds, which is worth doing, considering that it will doubtlessly be one of the biggest games of next year. Yeah. So it makes sense, but I think that this was a little bit of a quieter year for Capcom.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think I don't know. I'm in my mind, I would go A, because I think we're coming off of multiple S tier years from them, of like where we're complimenting them for trying new IP and diversifying their genres, bringing back old IP. We've been and like obviously Resident Evil's been hitting for a long time. Monster Hunter's been hitting for a long time, but
Sure.
they obviously revived Street Fighter in a significant way last year. Extra Primal wasn't the biggest thing, but Kunitsukamui wasn't the biggest thing. But both of those games and Pragmata show that they're interested in not just doing the same thing over and over again. They've been very, very good at collections. But I think that this year, to me, the reason why I would say A tier is because, like, I think it's okay to not have an S tier year every year, but they can still be, like, this is an A tier year from an S tier developer. Like they're one of the best doing it in the industry. I call them the Cap Gods because they're on a legendary run, and I don't think this breaks their run. This slows it down just a little bit because there wasn't Monster Hunter or Resident Evil or Street Fighter this year. But I don't know. Maybe you're right about B. Maybe you're right about B. But like, they're in the same tier as Pocket Bear. It's Capcom.
Yeah, I mean, I love Capcom. We can put them in A tier. I just think that it was just smaller games this year.
The potatoes weren't fully grown. Smaller potatoes.
But Marvel vs. Capcom was certainly a big announcement.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll put them in A. That's fun. Yeah. I mean, I love Capcom. Whatever.
Team
I'm
Soviet.
never gonna argue.
Oh.
I'm not gonna argue Capcom down.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. I had to argue them up, but you want to talk about Team Athobi?
Team Asobi could put them right in S tier, in my opinion.
Sure.
I mean, they won Game of the Year.
Yeah.
And they won Game of the Year on a game that we've not only sung the creative praises of a million times, but also.
Oh shit! Look at this fucking thing.
What?
I've got Jesse.
Like.
Oh, that's right. You
I
can't see me.
it.
That's right. You can't see me, but everyone else can, and I can see me, and he can see me because he's squirming. Bye bye.
True. Yeah. So I mean, creatively, they're on top in top form.
Yeah.
Obviously, the accolades are the biggest that you.
I heard
can
that show
receive.
season 2 got canceled.
It did, unfortunately.
The accolades.
But moreover, they're a really sustainable team. And it's something we've talked a lot about. Development practice has been a big theme of this discussion.
Definitely.
So I feel like they're just doing it about as well as you can do it. Does S tier make sense to you?
I agree, because I think with the 3 that we have in S tier right now, sustainable, healthy business practices is what I think that's what puts you in S tier, right? Like, and maybe we could argue something like that for Capcom, but also creatively is another aspect of it. But I think in S tier, healthy business practices and being a good role model for the wider industry is part of what, in my mind, puts a studio as S tier. And Team Asobi definitely does that. They are one of the only Japanese teams working for PlayStation. They're working on a smaller scale, which very few PlayStation teams do. They're delivering a different genre for that studio, for that conglomerate. And also, they're the ones still keeping the legacy of PlayStation alive in a way that other teams have started to sort of move away from. And so, yeah, I totally agree. And I think what's interesting is that I think that for most of this decade, you can look at the Game of the Year winners, and I would say that basically, if we had done this for any of those years, we would have put them in S tier, because I think Larian with Baldur's Gate, It Takes Two, Hazelight, yeah, Hazelight, If It Takes Two, Naughty Dog with Last of Us 2, and obviously From Software with Sekiro. Like, we're talking about healthy, creative studios delivering at a consistent pace, and really succeeding with it. And so, yeah, I think that this totally deserved. You were grinning. Did you just send me something? Is it something perverted? Should I read this on the stream?
Yeah, if you want.
Naughty Pog. Okay, yeah. I was listening up the teams and I saw a grin sneak on your face. I'm like, okay, I need to finish what I'm saying, but I also need to know what he's thinking of. Naughty Pog. Yeah, that's just, yeah.
Yeah, you love one of those, don't you?
Yeah. You made a good argument. So I think.
What are we even talking about? Yeah, we're on the same page. I just wanted to note, Joe. I apologize. Capcom says Capcom wouldn't be asked for me, but I can settle for A. Yeah. Not only did we not put Capcom where Joe wants, but we also put Asobi, who Joe is the #1 enemy of.
That's true. Well, he's actually just Astrobot, the person's #1 personal enemy. I don't think he has anything against Nicholas Doucet or the rest of the team. I think it's just their sworn leader, Astrobot.
Yeah, Joe, if you could clarify
Do you
Can you
hate Nicholas to
clarify?
say that? Can you say that into my lapel?
Sorry, I'm also just distracted because hello, my friend on the server and Steven are arguing over the definition of fucking.
What?
Um,
Okay, I'll need to check on that later. But I have something to focus on
um,
right now.
local thunk.
Yeah.
Now this is an interesting one for me, Tucker,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, I mean, well, because here's my thought process, right? Balatro belongs in S tier, I would say.
Yeah.
But do we have to factor in at all, do you think, the relevance of local thunk maybe being a great difference between Balatro and local thunk, if that makes sense? Like the man local thunk is clearly an extremely talented developer,
Yeah.
but is local thunk going to become a household name, or
Yeah.
is Balatro just like a really massive hit? Or is there even a chance that local thunk is a concerned ape type where
Yeah.
really they are this one product?
Sure.
But I guess either way, for the context of this conversation, doesn't really matter. I think you'd have to put
Yeah.
local thunk in S. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do agree, and I think that you make a really interesting point. And I think you made an apt comparison to Concerned Ape. I think you can make a comparison to Toby Fox.
Yeah.
Creators that have made genre industry defining games from a singular creative vision and aren't particularly apt or interested in like being the big guy on stage that's talking to everyone and like the Joseph Ferris type is none of these guys are. And I think that hesitance for all of them, frankly, comes from the fact that they are solo devs, and we haven't seen what their long-term legacy is. I
Yeah.
think it's possible that Deltarune and Haunted Chocolatier give both of those guys, Toby Fox and Concerned Ape, a little bit more like long-term cachet. Though obviously Undertale and Stardew Valley haven't gone anywhere. They're single game guys. Yeah. Balatro is only 1 year old, not even. And so
Yeah.
we're not even close to seeing if this is a long-term tale like Undertale or Stardew is. But for what it is as a diversification of the industry, a strong new creative vision that breaks into that top tier of conversation in not only sales but critical and awards, this is the kind of like story that I want to champion. Of like, games can be allotted for different things. You just got to deliver on it creatively. He did it very sustainably. He's been very transparent about his story. Did you come up with something else? I see a sparkle in your eyes.
No, sorry, because I'm just seeing the Discord now.
Stop reading the Discord. Focus on the fucking conversation.
Asked, what are furries? How can I not focus on that?
Turn off your Discord notifications. I have them turned off.
No, but I think you're right, because again, it goes back to what we've been saying, and I sound like a broken record, but again, development practice. Who's making the games? How are they making the games?
Yep.
It's interesting because this is our story to champion, but what's also interesting about Balatro is that Balatro could have very easily been a cautionary tale if things had gone a little bit different, right? Because this was a game made over the course of many, many, many years.
Yeah,
and it just so happened to pay off.
Pandemic, I think it might have been a 4-year, something like that. But for one guy,
yeah,
it's a long time.
And if that were to come out and miss, well, then actually that's quite a shame.
Yeah.
So I think that it's funny that, a game about gambling, there was certainly a bit of luck in what happened here, which is not to say that Balatro is anything short of a great game.
Yeah.
But just to say that the story of Local Thunk is not an easily repeatable one. Like I look at what we're saying with Strange Scaffold and say that Strange Scaffold is an archetype.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say the same thing about Local Thunk.
No, absolutely, because there is the archetype of the massively successful solo indie dev. But that's not. Right. It's something a lot of people chase. It's not necessarily the best thing to chase because it does require quite a bit of specific timing, creative vision, hitting at the right time, word of mouth, which is very hard to control, impossible to control. So yeah. But I think that regardless, the larger context of potential of hypothetically, if Balatro didn't hit, it would be a cautionary tale. And also, if someone else tries to make the next Balatro and fails, then that's bad for them. None of that actually has to do with Local Thunk making one of the most successful games of the year. And so Joe says Archetype Missions, Atlas next. Oh, wait. Oh, I do. Okay, I have Studio Zero on here. I don't have Atlas. I have Don't Nod twice, which is funny. That's an accident.
Yeah, I mean, I also just sort of a sidebar, right? But the massive success of this game on mobile also I find to be quite interesting.
Sure.
Outperforming, obviously, Minecraft Pocket Edition.
Yeah.
So I think by and obviously the immense amount of awards, I think by every metric we use, you got to put Logothunk in
Yeah.
A tier. Sorry, and I think they need to go in A tier, and that tier should be S tier.
Okay.
Tucker, I
There's
do not know who
there's a butthole.
Landfall is.
There's a butthole in front of the camera. Can you not do that? Bye bye, friend.
Who's Landfall?
Landfall
He's
Games.
skinny. He's skinny.
Landfall Games were the creators of Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, and then this year they made Content Warning, which is a multiplayer game in the vein of something like Lethal Company, actually quite similar, that came out on April Fools as kind of a joke. I believe Landfall most years does an April Fools game. Just something
Yeah.
totally whack for them, and ended up becoming one of the biggest like word of mouth successes of the year. It was actually, I believe, free for the first 24 hours, which really helped.
Yeah. It's a
But
great idea.
but yeah, which definitely. But it also, I think, in a similar to what I was praising about Pocket Pair, but I think where we can more agree, you and I, is they pinpointed a type of game that people like to play, and they totally reinvented it and completely gave it a fresh spin, and it has its own identity. And like, I think Content Warning is one of the smartest multiplayer games of all time. For those of you who don't know, it's a game where you and three of your friends go into like dungeons where it's randomly generated. There's monsters down there, and you try to record as funny videos as you can to upload them to a imaginary network and get points so you can then buy new equipment, buy a boom mic, buy lighting, buy things like that. And you record these videos with physics. You're like, one person is holding the camera and they can like make it point at themselves. One person has to like hold the clapper board. One person has to be like the boom operator. Like, this is a social game mixing in the social aspect of social media in such a clever and unique way. I mean, it's so fucking clever. Like, I think award cleverest game of the year goes to Content Warning, because every time I think about that game, I'm like, that it's so smart. It's so fucking smart that they did that, and it's also a lot of fun. I mean, Timo and I played that game. It's pretty scary actually, but it's also immensely funny. It's got this very fun like cartoon style, released in an interesting way. I think it's one of my favorite like stories of the year.
Where do you want to put them?
I think that's A tier. I think that's A tier.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Because I hear what you're saying 100%, and I think that Content Warning is really undeniable and it was very smartly marketed. But I just wonder, like, well, no, I mean, because again, it's a snapshot of this year.
Yeah.
So that probably makes sense.
Don't bite me. Sorry, I was talking to you.
I, I, I think that, like, because as we were saying before, Capcom on the same tier as Pocket Pair, but I'm looking at this and saying Landfall on the same tier as EA Orlando or Capcom or these other teams.
I think it's of their context, though, right? Like,
yeah, no, 100%. But I also think, like, again, I look at a game like Content Warning, and it's very clever and it's very shrewd, but I see a game like Totally Accurate Battle Simulator as as being demonstrative of a lot more creative vision than a game like Content Warning.
Oh, sure.
Not that anything you're saying about Content Warning is incorrect or to take away from it, but it is, again, I think it was a very shrewdly concepted game.
Yeah.
It looked at a type of game that was popular and fit itself into that.
Sure.
And I guess that, to me, that just doesn't go quite as far.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think Astrobot's a lot less original game than Content Warning is. Like, if we're talking about operating within genres and that being like a limiting factor, I don't necessarily think that's fair, because I think also, and to your point, I'm not saying that you're like shitting on any of these developers, but I think there is a lot more to be appreciated and praised about working within established genres and archetypes and finding success regardless. I mean, and expanding them. I think that's where a lot of the most successful games in the industry come from, and games that stand the test of time. But I certainly understand the draw towards something that feels a lot more original. I mean, Click Holding is probably the most original game that released last year or this year. So I understand that, but I do think that, like, when you play Lethal Company versus Content Warning, the experience is drastically different, and it's because
Sure.
they did come up with and maybe it's just because I feel like the what is new about Content Warning is so clever that it like outrides
Yeah.
the entire fact that like structurally it's basically the same game as Lethal Company, but yeah, I don't know. I think you make a fair point.
I mean, to me, again, it's not necessarily just about pure originality, because I mean, again,
Yeah.
you're totally right that Astrobot is not a particularly original game in a lot of senses,
Yeah.
but it's a game that I think has stayed better, but that's an unfair comparison. But
Yeah.
I think even if you just look at a game like Content Warning unto itself, I was just checking, there's still about what 4,500 people playing it currently, which is really cool. But obviously, it's a precipitous fall for a game that I think will just continue to fall.
Yeah.
And I
Sure.
look at this as more of a game of a moment opposed to a game of a year. Like if you think about the way
Yeah.
that Balatro was a viral game 100%, but its virality wasn't confined to its moment in the sun.
Sure.
Whereas
Yeah,
I
I
might
understand
look
that.
at Content Warning as more of that.
I totally agree with
Which
that.
is why I would argue for B, but ultimately you're the one that's played Content Warning, so
Yeah, yeah.
I defer to you
Well,
in the
here's
end.
the thing. I totally agree with you. And
Yeah.
that specific reason is like, I'm not bringing back Landfall next year, unless they put out another game, but I think that's unlikely. This is a snapshot of 2024. And for a studio that brought a game to the industry in 2024 and did I think, some of the best work in the industry,
Yeah.
I think they're to be commended for operating in that space and targeting frankly for them it's like targeting the desires of players, right? Like
Yeah.
they used psychology and like the ways that our minds are structured now that we've experienced social media for so long. Like lots of games have tried that. Like you'll have like a little social media app on your phone in the game or whatever, but it never really is that interesting. But they reverse analyze like the appeal of social media and put it into game design. I'm like, I think that's really, really special.
Sure. Yeah, so leave it an A. I think you make a good case.
Next up,
Shared memory.
which is Billy Basso's
Has next
studio.
resist?
No,
Oh, fuck.
Billy. Wait. Oh, wait. No, wait. No, wait. No, okay,
Am I
that is Billy Basso. No, yeah, yeah.
Shared memory.
Wait.
Oh.
Who made what's the Thousand Acres This studio? I don't actually
Shared
know.
memory opens up a
Hold on.
shared memory
Well, I can just.
studio. Animal Well. You know you're
Okay,
right.
Sunset Visitor
Wrong.
is the Thousand Acres This team. I don't have them on here.
I'm wrong. Now hold on. Time out here.
Did I fuck up?
No, time out. There's a issue in the Discord.
Big
I know,
enough.
I know I'm not supposed to look at it, but I got tagged by bro.
What happened?
We got some insults being thrown around.
What did I do?
Insults being thrown around between Steven and hello my friend. Called Steven a pussy a couple times, deleted the messages. Seems to be some argument about age.
Okay. Oh, fuck. I don't want to deal with this
Let's
right
see.
now.
No, I'm gonna. Can we? Hello, my friend. I think you're gonna have to at least be timed out for a moment. Is that something I can do?
From the server, I don't know.
Can you time somebody out from a Discord server?
Okay, I need to read through this more specifically later.
Yeah.
Oh, God damn it.
Yeah, you put a message here. What are you gonna say? This is live crisis response. Live crisis response here.
I'm streaming right now, guys. Can I deal with this in like an hour? Not the best way to be a leader, but I don't want to completely derail this when we're making good progress, especially because we do have limited time.
Yeah. Here's what I'm gonna say, and then we'll move on. No one send any more messages here
Actually, you know
until
what? Perfect.
the stream is done.
Okay, yes.
Then we will address this.
Yes. Yes.
Send a message.
I should
Get
have said that.
get-
It's smarter.
Send a message before the stream is done.
That's a message. Scarfy.
You get kicked. There we go. Okay, we'll address this. We'll address this after.
Okay. Perfect. They're just gonna move
Okay.
to another channel, but it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Shared memory. Yeah. Now, Tucker. Here's an interesting one. Do
Yeah.
you have big mode on here?
No, I think we can. Should we just use them as the? This is an opportunity to talk about both of them, or I can go download
Yeah,
the
I
fucking
mean,
big mode log if you want.
well, it's just because here's my thought process, right? I think that big mode. Well, let me rewind. Animal Wells is such an amazing game. Billy Basso is a figure quite similar to Loco Thunk, I think you
Yeah,
can say,
totally.
and Billy Basso obviously been working on Animal Well even longer. Um, so that is it's an interesting story, and it's sort of an archetype we're seeing in 2024, and obviously it's the sort of thing we talked about back in our Zeitgeist video,
Yeah.
right? And so this sort of type of game being popular.
Mm-hmm.
However, Animal Well is an interesting one to me because I truly believe that if it wasn't for the intervention of
Big
Big
mode.
Mode,
Yeah.
it would not be the game it is
No.
by any stretch of the
Absolutely
imagination.
not. Yeah. Obviously, quality
And
wise, probably wouldn't really have changed too much, but the impact wise, I completely agree.
yeah, I mean, quality-wise, probably wouldn't have changed at all, considering the game has been in development for so long. It's
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
not like Billy Bass was working to a schedule, right?
Yeah.
Again, that's not a criticism; it's just a
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wouldn't have changed the end product. But I think that if you want to attribute Animal Wells' sort of cultural moment to anybody, it goes to Big Mode. Not its quality, not the actual art itself, but the cultural moment. So
Yeah.
I don't know if this is
No,
a distinct. I don't know if I'm making a useful distinction, but in my head, I think that shared memory would go in a lower position than Big Mode would go in. Does that make sense to you?
I agree. I think that yeah, yes, I do completely agree.
Yeah.
I think we'll just merge them into one. Like, would you say that
Yeah.
big mode is like a B
I
tier
would put Big Mode.
or A tier or
Yeah, I would probably put Big Mode in A tier.
yeah, and then
And the reason
and
that
you'd probably say shared memory for your distinction would be B tier.
I think so,
Okay, no, I think that's I think it's totally fine. I agree with that. Yeah.
because I also
Do you want me to download the other fucking thing?
can you
Yeah.
can you sort of do a hot addition?
Big mode
Can you
logo.
can you Paw Patrol on the roll?
Okay, I'll just download floppy
yeah,
or
get
whatever.
Biggie.
Fucking you know what? That makes way more sense than floppy.
Yeah,
Save to
can you
desktop.
add it into a tier list? It's like in progress.
No. Uh, I can. I can save it.
Here, hold on. I'll take a screenshot.
And you can just add it in post. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Can just like if you're in the chat right now, can you just imagine that Big Mode is an A tier? Is that within the realm of the human imagination?
Well, I just don't want to get rid of all our progress if it.
Yeah, I don't
Like, I don't
either.
wanna risk
That's
that.
what I'm saying. Is it audience members? Is it in your power to imagine that the Big Mode frog is in the A tier? Can you do that? I'm gonna hope that the answer is yes.
Yes.
Um,
But I think your distinction is fair. The pros that I would still give Billy Basso on a design level, I think,
yeah.
in my mind, could raise him higher because I think what is so special to me about Animal, even though it's not one of my personal favorite games of the year, is that
Yeah.
it in some way pinpoints the what I find like sort of the FromSoft appeal about like community piecing together secrets of a
Yeah.
game, which I think is something that's really tough to do, and I think Billy did really really well. And the layers of the game, and again the social element of like discovering like the language and
Yeah.
like discovering that there's like 6 layers deeper that you can go. I mean, like that is some design prowess that is, I mean, I think is legendary. And so it'll be interesting to see if he can continue that forward. But I do think that the success of the game and frankly the reason why people can recognize Billy's talent that he has is because Donkey was able to step in and publicize the game more. He noticed the quality of it and was able to get more eyes on it. And so it's definitely a collaborative process there, developer publisher relation. But I think that they both did something I think very special for the success of that game. Of
Yeah.
Billy noticing a desire for that kind of design, and Donkey noticing that kind of design can go unnoticed, and so like let's make sure this game gets some eyes on it.
100%. And I think Big Mode also sort of
Joe says it's
suggests-
already in the A tier, and he's right. You just have to use your mind.
Yeah. Yes. I think that Big Mud suggests like a new way to market indie games and move
Sure.
indie games in the marketplace, which
Yeah.
is why I think it
And
belongs in
Nintendo
A.
Directs.
Yeah,
They just
I mean the big question about Big Mode for me obviously is if this is a repeatable
yeah,
formula.
yeah.
Like if
Mm-hmm.
the next Big Mode game is able to be propelled the way that Animal Well was, then I think Big Mode becomes an S tier publishing
Sure.
partner.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I think this is the way it's got to be.
Yeah.
So A and B tier, and that sounds good to me.
Yeah. Next up, Ubisoft Massive.
Ooh, I'm curious to hear your take on this first because obviously I'm a little bit closer to it. Also, hello, my friend. I just screen capped you telling Scruffy to suck your dick, so you're getting banned from the server.
I don't think he's watching, but where did that happen?
Whack-a-mole, fool.
Where did that happen?
In the backlog, I have the screenshot because I got tagged in the server again, and then there was no message, and I was like, I'm onto your game. I'm wise to your game.
Wait, that just happened in the backlog after we said don't send more messages?
Yeah.
What a fucking idiot.
There we go.
Okay.
Um,
Ubisoft
yeah.
Massive.
Yeah, there we go. Problem solved.
Massive is an unfortunate situation this year.
Yeah.
Because I don't think any of their issues are on them. I think it is the larger pressures of Ubisoft and Disney and ballooning game budgets that made the game come out in a not unfinished state, but certainly had issues that they quickly worked to remedy and have shifted direction quite significantly. But I think to me shows that they were thinking about this even before the game came out, and they're like, we just can't do anything about it till it's out. But the reality is, I do think that the kind of nothing, the way that Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora came out late last year and didn't hit any particular metrics. Fine reception as far as I know. Fine sales. I don't really know much about that. That into back-to-back Star Wars Outlaws, which is a big failure for Ubisoft, in that it might have had the biggest potential of any of the games that they've done. A open world Ubisoft game in the Star Wars IP, and then to the degree it sold such a small amount, I think this really hurts Massive's reputation. I think they had to. I think 18 months ago, when you say they have an Avatar game and a Star Wars game in development, and they're coming off of Division 2, you're like, well, they're probably Ubisoft's best team, maybe. But then I think that they're gonna have a lot of goodwill to regain after
I agree.
most people being quite disappointed by. I mean, I don't really know critically how Avatar versus Star Wars were received, but both of those games not being big when they were certainly intended to be big, I think does show that that team has some soul searching to do, and obviously Ubisoft has some soul searching to do, but they're part of that as well, and so. I think maybe C. I think it's actually similar to Ninja Theory, where it's like they were put into a position by their publisher. But on both of their sides, it's like some things could have been done on the development side to alleviate quite a bit of the issues that they had. So I think C is probably fair, and yeah, in my mind, very similar to what we talked about with Ninja Theory.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is actually Disney's fault.
Sure.
Because I look at the two projects.
Yeah.
Just to close the loop on it, by the way, Joe, I'm sorry that happened to you, that conversation unfolded the way it did.
Yeah.
It's very unacceptable, and I'm glad that we took care of that. But book is closed on that now. So when you look at the two games, right, I don't actually really think it's an issue of quality or talent of the team at all, personally. Because I think that there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah.
I didn't play Avatar. I played Star Wars Outlaws. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would.
Yeah.
But that's obviously because the version of the game they wanted to make is not the version they could make in time for release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I look at that and I wonder, okay, well, why is that the case? And then I think about the fact that, like, Lego Star Wars, Skywalker Saga came out a little undercooked. Mm-hmm. And I think about issues across the recent slate of Star Wars games.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder,
problems with Star Wars Jedi Survivors PC port. I mean, that was a broken fucking thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Even when I played it on PlayStation 5 at launch, there's all kinds of weird issues in that game.
Yeah,
I have to wonder if it's Disney exercising, an undue pressure
sure.
onto Team like Massive, and it just so happens that their two projects are both beholden to Disney.
I think that's
And
totally
hit
fair.
back to
Yeah, yeah.
back.
Is there? There's a
And
Lucasfilm Games, right? That's probably who you would lay that at.
no, not entirely because Avatar is not Lucasfilm Games.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, sure.
Um,
I see what you're saying. Disney's relationship to this studio who made two games from their IP.
yeah,
Yeah, 100%. Because I was also just thinking like, also Marvel Games is also Disney, but that they definitely feel like a different thing because they have actually a pretty good
yeah.
track record recently. So I don't know. I was just trying to divide that in my mind, but totally makes sense the way you're framing it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not to absolve Massive of criticism because there are decisions like the Force Stealth, which has since been removed,
Yeah.
or the fact that the game has a different creative director post
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
release that suggests that the team is disorganized. But I think that if I had to point to a root cause, I would probably point to Disney.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it doesn't change the fact that I agree with you. I think C tier is the right position
Yeah,
for them.
yeah, and again, I agree. It's not necessarily a talent thing, but this is a snapshot of them in 2024. Their
Yeah,
reputation tanked in 2024. They made a game that, by all accounts, most people weren't a big fan of, and
yeah,
they were known for quality up until they made two games that are like good at best.
yeah,
And so yeah, I think that's fair enough. Next up, I have Deck Nine, who I think also goes in C tier. Um, Deck Nine, they are the team that is currently the Herald of the Life is Strange series.
yeah.
After Don't Nod stopped doing those games with Square Enix, they had a unfortunate year. They had, I believe, some like strikes at their studio for like their higher ups. No, no, that's sorry. That's Don't Nod. I'm getting this. I'm getting this mixed up. They had, I believe, Deck Nine had some layoffs. They had some controversy about someone on their team putting like Nazi messages into their games, which that specifically I don't think that's like here nor there for the larger team. But then Life is Strange Double Exposure comes out and is quite controversial. A lot of people think that it's kind of a cash grab to be going back to Max Caulfield's story and kind of ruins the creative intent of what that original team did. And I
Yeah.
mean, even though I think this is kind of cool, I think a lot of people have an issue with the ending of Double Exposure. Kind of hints that they want to do like a Avengers style X-Men universe for Life is Strange, which has never really been planted before, and so it was a tough year for them. And even though I liked Double Exposure, it is nowhere near
Yeah.
True Colors, which I think is a phenomenal game, one of my favorite games of all time. And with all their controversies and with the controversy around Double Exposure, their reputation also took quite a solid nosedive this year, and they're gonna
Yeah.
have to work hard, especially with the Life is Strange community. They're gonna have to work hard to regain that goodwill.
I would actually argue down. I'd
Sure.
argue down to D. And the reason I would do that is because there's a little I'm trying to remember back and I really implore people to read it. I'll actually see if I can get the link right now. Rebecca Valentine, Deck 9. Yeah. Just the headline here, how hidden Nazi symbols were the tip of the toxic iceberg at
Yeah.
Life is Strange developer Deck 9. If I'm remembering correctly, and this story was published back
Oh,
in April, so
yeah. Sorry. Continue.
I'm digging deep into my memory here, but it goes further to a culture wherein the management of the studio is not really taking the verifiable white supremacist secrets snuck
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
game seriously enough.
Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Deck Nine also was able to secure a future in Life is Strange, if I remember correctly, through underbidding
Oh, interesting.
to get the contract for the work. Again, everybody should go back and read the story and check me on this because again, I read this like literally
Yeah.
8 months ago. But to me, Deck Nine is a deeply flawed team, and I
Yeah.
think that the layoffs before and after release are
Yep.
indicative of that, and the fact that the product is not even resonant with fans, and in fact, the issues. The social cultural issues inside the team cut against the messages of the
Yep.
game and the people they're trying to make art for. To me, it just sort of suggests almost
Yeah.
a unilateral failure.
Yeah. You
So
know what? You make a great point. C tier was that I actually kind of like Double Exposure, and so it. You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't hate their output, but I think you make a great point. I actually read my notes, which I should start doing before I start doing my opening tirade, but whatever. They had layoffs in both February and December, which is
Yeah.
shows a clear, like, hey, something's not going right here. And I think that combined with the controversy shows that this, if S tier is you're a good role model for the industry, D tier is don't be a deck 9. Don't lay off your people. Don't make a game that is meant to be for the fans, and then you don't quite get it, and don't have these controversies and take things seriously and treat your employees right. Yeah, you're right. Totally fair. That's a D tier team.
Ryuga Gotoku.
Ryuga Gotoku. I don't know. That's how I imagine if like the Sega guy said their studio name every time their logo showed up. Ryuga Gotoku.
So they released 3 games this year.
What was the third one? There was
Monkey Ball,
Infinite Wealth.
Didn't they release The Man Who Released His Name, or
No.
they all run together in my mind?
No, okay. Ryuga Gotoku.
They released 2 games.
Yeah. Hold on, let me pull out my notes. Okay, yeah. They were
Right, sorry, they released 2 games and announced 4 more.
4 games?
That's where I was getting confused.
Yeah, you did the average.
I did.
So, Ryuga Gotoku is the Yakuza and Monkey Ball studio.
Yeah.
Why you're confused about their output of games is because they are doing things at such an insane clip that it boggles the fucking mind, and it is very difficult to keep up with. What you're remembering is that last year they released Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, which was a smaller spin-off for the Yakuza series. And I don't really know much about it, but and then a few months later, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth came out, nominated for Best RPG, very well received game. I believe their biggest launch ever. A game that I bought and now has inspired me to become a fan of the series. It's gonna take me like maybe 3 years, but I will get to Infinite Wealth, and I'm sure it'll be one of my favorite games ever. And then they also announced and released Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, which I'll give you a chance to talk about in a second. And then also announced that they're doing a PC port of Virtua Fighter 5 called Virtua Fighter 5 Revo, which is coming out early next year. And they announced 2 more games back-to-back at the Game Awards. A new Virtua Fighter, which is a fighting game for them, which is something different. And I think what looks like a new IP called codename Project Century, which had a really, really cool trailer. They had a crazy fucking year, April.
I agree. Now here, I might be controversial here, but I put them in A, not S.
Sure.
The reason I do that is because, I mean, like the Yakuza stuff is really cool. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
Monkey Ball is for me, and I love Monkey Ball, but I don't really think Monkey Ball moves the needle in either direction, frankly, for the position of the team. I just love Monkey Ball. I think the reason I put them in A, not S, is that I don't think that they really speak to anybody outside of their niche. Now, I don't think they have to. I don't think that's an issue. It's similar to like Omega Force. Mm-hmm. The fact that Omega Force makes Warriors games for Warriors fans and that's it is great. Yeah. But I think that, when you're looking at other prolific teams, they have sort of a wider output.
Yeah, sure.
And that's why something like Project Century.
Yeah. And Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, those really interest me a lot to a future where RGG is an S tier team and they're making things for more people, or they're just making things like what they already make. Project Century very clearly looks to be in the tradition of Yakuza, but it's pretty clearly a new entry point. Mm-hmm. I think that they make sense in A opposed to S right now.
Yeah, I think you made a great argument for at the moment they've really just done Yakuza and Monkey Ball for almost their entire history. Of course, there are a couple of anomalous things, F-Zero and Binary Domain or whatever the fuck in there. But I think that this year, actually, much like Strange Scaffold and Remedy to a certain degree, shows that they've got, because of their growing success, though I will say, you make a good point about them speaking to their niche has grown significantly over the course of this decade as Yakuza has become a much more well-regarded and popular series, and also bringing back Monkey Ball with a new entry this year. I don't know if it's sales-wise like how it fits into the Monkey Ball lineage, but I think they made a lot of effort in this year and last year to grow that niche, and obviously did it very successfully. Both Infinite Wealth and Banana Rumble are very well-received games, and also I didn't mention it in my opening bit. They also announced Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, which is a ridiculously goofy spinoff that releases in 2 months.
It's crazy.
Abram, I was wrong. They did announce 4 games. They announced 5 games this year.
Yeah.
And so
Cool.
to me, they're the best doing it. And so in my mind, they're an S tier team, not only because I've now gotten into Yakuza and think it's actually quite exceptional as a series, but they will be much bigger by the end of 2026 because they will presumably have had 4 or 5 more games released, and there's no indication that they won't be quality games. So they were actually the reason I wanted to talk about this, because I really think that they were one of the most interesting teams this year. A clip of announcing games, delivering on, like, they clearly manage their teams and budgets within a fucking razor's edge, and they have that balance down. And obviously, who knows if they'll continue that into the future, but they've been doing it for so long. It's like, I think we're looking forward to a great fighting game, a great new IP, a great funny pirate game where you have a pet tiger.
Extremely, extremely, extremely good reuse of assets and systems. Which is why hopefully we get another Monkey Ball.
I think that's very possible. I think 2 years from now we'll see another one. Frankly,
I
Switch
I
2
really
one
would
totally.
like because this is the first new Monkey Ball game since Banana Splits, which was what, a decade ago.
Yeah, if not more. Yeah.
On Vita.
I don't know.
It's also an okay game.
I'm gonna make an executive decision.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about PlayStation and Xbox. They're getting their
Yes.
own videos, recapping their years.
Yeah. So by that same era, let's take Nintendo out.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We did a whole review of Nintendo's year, which is going to be out tomorrow as of the time of the stream.
Yep.
We'll make videos for the other two, so we'll talk about them in more detail there.
Yeah.
They also just don't quite fit.
Also, they're so big that we'd have to talk about so much that we need to work.
And we have a time pressure.
Yes.
BioWare. I think BioWare probably. Just quickly, Joe says RGG's range is really incredible. I'm excited to see what Project Century is all about and if they take advantage of what they already have.
Yeah.
My view is that they simply understand that Yakuza is too hard to get into, and Project Century is a good jumping in point.
Yes.
For that similar style of game that can reuse a lot of work, which is great.
Yep.
Really smart. BioWare, I kind of think BioWare goes in either B or C. What do you think?
I think B, and the reason why I want to talk about them here is because they are on a different trajectory from some of the teams like Massive Ninja Theory that we've talked about, where they are regaining their goodwill. They just spent the last decade on a really terrible downward slide. Of course, Dragon Age Inquisition is a success, but controversy in Mass Effect 3, Anthem, weird failure, and Mass Effect Andromeda, weird failure. Dragon Age Veilguard obviously has its own share of interesting controversy, but it is their best received game by a fucking country mile and a half in 10 years since Dragon Age Inquisition came out. And so I think that they showed that they still do have some of that spark in them, where they can make a quality RPG that people really get into after, I mean, honestly, I think Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda are two of the biggest jokes in the industry of the last decade. And Dragon Age Veilguard is not the next Mass Effect 2, but it is a lot closer to that than fucking Anthem and Andromeda were.
I think, no, that's a good point. I mean, and also, I think it's interesting to have them on the same tier as Bluebird, because I think you can share some of that narrative in a similar 100%. Way, right?
Yeah.
I'm beginning to be really curious to see if they keep climbing upwards. That's the hope, of course.
Yeah, they have another Mass Effect game announced. What does that actually mean? Who the fuck knows? But hopefully we see that before the end of the decade. And I also will say it broke BioWare's highest concurrent player count on Steam, so clearly there was some appetite for that. Though
no, there wasn't. It was for the modern audience. It was woke or whatever. Sega. Sega. I think Sega had an S tier year, to be honest with you.
I think they did too. I absolutely think they did. For context, Sega's output publishing this year included Persona 3 Reload, Metaphor ReFantazio. I'll just say the studios. Persona 3 Reload from P Studio, Metaphor ReFantazio from Studio Zero.
Sorry. From what studio?
Piss Studio. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth from Ryoga Gotoku, Sonic X Shadow Generations from Sonic Team, I believe they're called. Unicorn Overlord from Vanillaware, and Monkey Ball Banana Rumble also from Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. And what's interesting is this year they had all three of I think their most prominent teams in Studio Zero, Studio Zero, P Studio, and Sonic Team working at what seems to be some of their best work in recent years. I think this is a really confident year from Sega. Good mix
Yeah.
of remakes and realization and new games and expansions, and with Unicorn Overlord, a new IP for them. I thought it was quite excellent. I mean, I only played Metaphor, but and I guess I played Banana Rumble as well. But yeah, very very good year. Diverse, consistent. Yeah,
Persona 3 Reload, good game. I played that for like 20 hours for whatever reason.
yeah, yeah. And they also
Um,
had a Sonic 3 movie come out this year, which is
yeah.
actually it's good. Abram, go see that movie. I think you'll actually really like it.
Yeah, I just don't think. I don't know.
You don't believe me?
I'll see it some. No, I do believe you. Just I don't think that Jean will believe you. And I can't drag another Sonic movie. I just can't do it.
Will I get
I can't do it.
will I get banned if I tell Jean to suck my dick? Or is that a phrase that we're not allowed to say here?
You're pushing it. You're pushing it, but I won't. I can't ban you. I can't ban
Jean,
you.
you'll like Sonic. I actually think she will like Sonic 3.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Um, what's next here? I
Science.
can't tell what that is.
That's Game Science.
Game Science.
Logo. Yeah.
Ooh, fuck. I don't know. I think you could probably put. Well, here's the thing. I think that Game Science is a little bit weird.
Sure.
Would you agree that that's a fair assessment of the people in that team? There's obviously been a lot of reporting about the culture of Game Science being poor.
Yeah.
There was a lot of weird conversation out of the Game Awards about them like pre-writing acceptance speeches and various shit, and like I don't know. There's just a lot of weirdness around the team, but it doesn't change the fact that a lot of that weirdness is also steeped in a conversation they didn't create or ask for.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
personally think that Game Science goes in B. Does that feel fair to you?
Sure. I would agree with that because I think I'm gonna actually zoom out one time just to make sure we can see everything. They, I think, can fall into a very similar bucket that Paper Games and NetEase did, of a team that we weren't familiar with delivering one of the biggest games of the year. On I played a little bit of that game, very high quality. And again, also the globalization thing. I'm glad to have a couple of Chinese teams that I can actually name now. And getting nominated for Game of the Year, one of the best-selling games of the year. I mean, by almost every metric, they were one of the best teams doing it this year. But I do think that when we're talking about being something to aspire to, if they're having these studio culture issues, that absolutely should hold them back. And so I think B balances out like the merit and quality that they have in their reception and sales, but if you're not treating people behind the scenes well, then let's change that. I would say personally.
I also don't think the quality of the game is in A tier or S tier.
Sure. No, I would agree with that, but like I also like as a snapshot of 2024, that's one of the best received and most popular games of the year. So it's like I gotta divorce myself a tiny bit from that.
Yeah. Landfall already did.
Next up, Annapurna.
Oh boy, can I get crazy with you here for a second? You love Annapurna. You love a lot of games on this list. I'm gonna say that they go in D tier.
I think that's fair. Let
me make my case here.
I know what your case is, but you can say it anyway. You just beamed it to me mentally.
I think that so
I'm gonna turn on my light while you say this, actually, but I know what you're saying, so it's okay. Keep talking.
Okay. Annapurna, their entire staff resigned. Overnight, there was such irreconcilable business differences here that suddenly nobody wanted to work for Annapurna anymore.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, cobble together some sort of new Annapurna of some kind. Like they even had a game at Day of the Devs.
Yeah.
But it's pretty brutal to have your whole team disappear. But I think even beyond that, I don't even think they're necessarily redeemed by the games they put out this year. Not that the games they put out this year are anything less than great across the board.
Yeah.
But because I don't think they're on the...
I have their lineup here. Open Roads, Laura and the Laser Eyes, and Flock.
Yeah, it's not...
They're all good
numerous.
Games. All actually some of my favorite games of the year. But yeah, it was a small lineup.
It's a small lineup. It's not a super. It's far from their biggest year ever. And I think when you look at those games, and then you look at the fact that Annapurna was clearly in such bad state that nobody wanted to be there anymore. I just don't
Yeah.
think you can make the case for anything other than D.
No, I agree, and I think what's unfortunate and frustrating about talking about them on this level, and why I don't know if it really makes too much difference. Like I would argue for a little bit higher because there's two different groups to talk about here. There's Annapurna Interactive as we knew it, that was signing these games with interesting dev teams and working with Keita Takahashi and working with Meshoff and working with making. I don't know what's gonna happen to that fucking Blade Runner game, but that's that's all, like they had a really interesting lineup. They were building it. They've been known for quality for a long time. I mean, like we've been talking about Annapurna for a while as like probably the best smaller publisher doing it. And that was that team that was the employees of Annapurna Interactive that were delivering that and working with such interesting creatives and had good marketing cycles and everything. But Annapurna Interactive as the larger thing clearly had such major issues that was no longer sustainable. And so there's the team that greenlit and helped get to market three of my favorite games of the year, which I think should be commended. But then they also all left. And so as a snapshot of the end of 2024, they're a fucking F tier studio. They're a dead tier studio, basically. But yeah, so it's complicated, but I think D right now, because we don't know what the future of, like they have like 12 games signed to this label.
Yeah.
I don't know what's gonna happen to any of those. Though I mean they were still obviously announcing a new game. Wheel World got another trailer. They're not canceling to a T. Like there's still things happening, but it's so complicated over there, and with all the literally everyone resigning, there's nothing above D that you can like really argue for.
I agree. Here's another interesting one, Tucker. I would put DNA in S.
One second, I'm just responding to something.
That stunned you into silence there.
Okay, DNA at S, sure. I can see that. This is another interesting one because I think they fall into the being able to identify an interesting niche and execute it on it very quality. DNA, if you don't know, is the mobile development studio that works alongside Nintendo and Pokemon Company. They did Pokemon Go, which is one of the S tier games of all time, and now they did Pokemon TCG Pocket, which is actually very different for them, and is an equally massive. Well, not equally. It's not as big as Pokemon Go, but it is a very very big success.
Yeah, and I mean they also did Mario Kart Tour. They did Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, but they did all this stuff. And so this is just the latest feather in their cap. And Pokemon TCG Pocket, I would say, received a lot better than one would expect. And just by merit of it, a game like this could have been so derailed by its business structure and microtransactions and everything, but it hasn't been. I think that the success that the game has found is illustrative of the fact that DNA is just a very, very good mobile game studio. And this is the latest in a string of very, very big hits. And this is not a game that's going to peter anytime soon.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And it's also good to see that they have multiple successes under their belt. Obviously, working alongside EPD9 on Mario Kart Tour was some level of success for them, but this is their next success down from Pokemon Go, which is one of the big successes that a studio can have. But they made. I'm mixing them up with Niantic. Niantic is the one that's had a interesting future since Pokemon Go. DNA was involved with Pokemon Go, but I don't know how, or maybe not. Maybe I need to stop referencing Pokemon Go. Did I fuck this up? Did I get those teams mixed up?
Actually, you did. Yeah, they did not work on Pokemon Go.
So scratch everything I said about Pokemon Go. But they're the ones that worked on the Nintendo mobile games. They did fucking Dragalia Lost, I believe, and
Miitomo, Super Mario Run, Fire Emblem Heroes, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp,
not Dragalia Lost,
Pokemon Masters.
Fuck. Okay, whatever.
No, that was Thai Games.
Well, you think I'll probably end the stream. But yeah, they did a great job with this game.
The point stands.
I just can't believe I'm just that stupid. Next up.
Yeah, you should probably die.
Probably. I took a couple down. Nomada, whatever, that Greece or Neva's one thing we don't really talk about them. I had Wrong Organ on here with mouth washing. We don't really talk about them. Square Enix, in the similar vein to Sega, we're talking about, and Capcom, we're talking about the publisher here.
Yeah.
Square Enix's year included Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Dragon Quest III HD 2D, Life is Strange Double Exposure, Visions of Mana, Foam Stars, and Fantasian Neo Dimension. Really complicated year here from World Square Enix.
Yeah, I think not a great year.
Yeah. Despite having
Um,
a Game of the Year caliber game, the rest of that catalog is really hit or miss.
I mean, they also had like a expansion for Final Fantasy 14 this year in
Oh,
Dawn
of course.
Trail.
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they had a shit ton of stuff actually wasn't on your list, which I think is just evident, emblematic of the fact that it's Square Enix needs to refocus really more than
Yeah.
anything.
Well, that's the
And
interesting thing. Like earlier this year, they said they were doing that, and basically what that meant is they're like, we're not doing any more fucking Harvestellas and various daydreams or whatever.
yeah, and I mean, like, I think you can kind of even make an argument that they did have those this year, but obviously, this is a slow-moving industry, so what they said earlier this year can't be held against what they were going to release later. But like, you know, people's apparently like Romancing Saga 2
Oh
remake
shit,
a
that's
lot.
right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
But that was released, I'm seeing here 5 days before Life is Strange, and more damning, like 3 weeks before Dragon Quest
Yeah,
3
yeah, yeah.
remake.
That's definitely true.
Like, they really need to get their house in order in that respect. And
Yeah,
obviously, they've been talking quite openly, even as the last couple of days, about how these Final Fantasy VII remake games don't make sense on a single platform.
yeah.
And so I think that you got to put Square Enix in B.
I
They
agree.
have some real, highlights, but they're just really encumbered with a lot of
Yeah,
random stuff. And they have to figure out a good balance,
yeah.
get into a Capcom position where you have your heaviest hitters, and
Absolutely.
you're not forgetting about your smaller IP
Yeah.
and your riskier projects, but you're not throwing so much at the wall.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
And it's also important to note that two of their associated studios this year had pretty significant issues. We already talked about Deck 9, which they don't own Deck 9, but they are the ones that have published literally all of their games, so they have some control over that studio. And also, the Visions of Mana studio shut down right after. Now, that's a little bit more on Tencent? No, not Tencent. It's another fucking Chinese company that shut down the Visions of Mana studio. But there's obviously a little bit of issues with the partners that they're choosing and like supporting and things, and so yeah, I think that definitely drags them down a little bit. Rocksteady is on the opposite of BioWare or Bloober Team. They are in the you have just totally fucking killed any goodwill that your studio had.
It was too long between games. You can't go that long after Arkham Knight and then release this. I think that that's really the nail in the coffin.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not just the quality of the game. I think, again, one miss shouldn't tank your studio, but I think it's unavoidable that when you go 9 years between projects and then the result is a game like this, that there's some real soul searching that has to be done. And if the rumors are to be believed, you end up in a position where you're working on Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah.
You become a second string team, and I think that's unfortunate. That's happened to Rocksteady.
Who used to be one of the leading teams in the industry. Yeah, this is the year where I mean they've already been on a downward slide as it's been so long, but nobody really likes Suicide Squad to Kill the Justice League. I'm interested to try it when it inevitably comes to like PS Plus or something, because that's where I tried Gotham Knights. I also thought that game was bad. Not Rocksteady, but similar family. Warner Brothers is having a really hit or miss year. I could have put that on here as well. Like I guess we can kind of include them with Rocksteady, but like they had a rough year. They had a very rough year.
I'm just curious for my own benefit. Arkham Shadow was made by Camouflage, who made Iron Man, if I remember.
And that's apparently a good game.
Apparently a good game. Point being, Rocksteady not only had a big miss, but their IP.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. Batman Arkham was done by somebody else.
Yeah.
And they're outshone there. So just a really not a good year. Tucker, why is Saber here? I can't.
Saber Interactive did Warhammer Space Marine 2, which was a really big hit this year, and shows that they're just a very, very consistent studio. I think that like they're just like the epitome in my mind of like a workhorse studio that delivers like solid multiplayer games in a IP I don't give a fuck about. But Saber's a team, a team and a group of studios that I want to learn a little bit more about. But I mean, here's the honest God truth. I don't know enough about them to like say like what's their culture like what's their history
Yeah.
like I do almost all of these other ones. But I wanted to make sure I mentioned them because Warhammer Space Marine 2 was a very very big hit for them. Um, and I keep getting people telling me you should play that game. You'd really like it. So
Yeah, I mean, Saber is like a massive enterprise.
yeah,
Um, they own a lot of shit. Uh, they were owned by Embracer, sold, divested to Beacon Interactive. I'm seeing here. I don't know who that is. But there's a lot. I mean, they comprise a number of subsidiaries.
yeah.
Um, so we're like, this is something out of a much larger conglomerate. I think B is probably okay,
Yeah, I think
but
that
I
that also
confess
reflects
I
the
don't.
fact that we don't really know what we're talking about with this one.
Maybe that one goes off the list. I get a
Yeah.
shout out.
We talked about them, so like, legally we're in the clear.
Yeah.
Don't
Don't
nod.
nod.
Don't nod is up next, and they're also in a really awkward position. I'm gonna put them in C tier. They are
Yeah.
one of the teams that I find the most interesting, and I am anticipating. Well, I think they have one upcoming game confirmed called Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, which I'm very much looking forward
Yeah.
to. But they're in a position on the other side of the coin from Remedy, where they had too many
Yeah.
pans in the fire, whatever the fucking saying is, and it's coming back to bite them in the butt.
Yeah.
To their credit, they had some restructuring this year where they're going to try to focus things on what matters without sacrificing variety. I believe they're restructuring into 3 specific teams, one of which is adventure games, one of which is their narrative games, and one of which is like more smaller experimental stuff. But the fact that they didn't have their ducks in a row this year and last year led to I was saying I think some strikes of their team members. I believe there were some layoffs, and also they did mention that both Banishers Ghost of New Eden, which they put out this year, and Jusant, which came out late last year, neither of which were profitable for them. The by all accounts, one of those I played, great game, and Banishers by all accounts is a very good game. But they definitely need to find a more clear path forward because even though I
Yeah.
love their experimentation, it's starting to falter for them.
100%. They gotta lock in. They gotta lock in. And obviously, a game like Lost Records is a return to form in a lot of ways. Yeah, sorry, I'm part of the cabal bought off because I used the term return to form. Um,
Oh, that's right. That
yeah,
was a fucking thing for BioWare.
it
Jesus
was.
Christ.
But yeah, I think they're just, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of teams like Don't Nod floating in precarious positions right
Yeah.
now. Because I read a game like I read the title Banishers of Ghosts of Eden and I think, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
I've never heard of that before in my life. And I think that just illustrates that indeed the double A space that a lot of people were confident and were excited about opening back up is
Yeah.
not, it's not a great
It's not
space
safe either. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and there's like, oh god, Unknown 9, right?
That was not them, but that was a
No, that's
Bandai
Bandai
Namco.
Namco.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of games here, or I think about like what Spiders makes, like your like, oh, the fucking
Webs.
Greedfall,
Oh.
yeah, and webs and things, Silk.
Yeah.
Um, I think that the double A space does not look as promising as it once did.
Yeah.
Even just a
I
couple years
agree.
ago.
And I think it would be a real shame if this team goes by the wayside because I think their insistence on variety and new IP is important for the industry.
Yeah.
And I think that Lost Records as a new IP, but also a return to form that also seems to have some really interesting like new steps forward. I think is a great sign for them. But also that game was supposed to come out this year.
Yeah.
To their credit, they delayed it because Life is Strange was coming out, and they're like, "We're not fucking stupid. We know that we need to give Life is Strange some space."
Yeah.
But that would have really, if the game is good, obviously the game's not out yet, but if that had come out this year, that would have helped change their trajectory a little bit. I think that probably would have bumped them up to B tier, but they delayed it out of the year. I think a smart business decision, but also they're having a lot of issues. So yeah, no, I think we're safe there. Next up is Shift Up, who I think is a comfortable B tier in the same vein as Game
I agree.
Science. Big step up for that team. Got a lot of eyes on them now. I played and really, really liked Stellar Blade. New IP from Sony. Working on it for a long time. I think they quite delivered. I'm excited to keep an eye on them in the future. Another globalization, South Korean team.
Yeah.
Big props to them. I also noted here. When I say here, I mean on this list that I now have to scroll through to figure out what the fuck I was talking about. Where the fuck is their thing? They did something this
I'm
year.
seeing some stream freezes on my end here.
My internet's probably just gonna catch up. Can you still hear me?
No, I can still hear you. I'm just seeing on the YouTube video, it looks like we're freezing a lot.
I can't really do much about it. Just gotta wait, I guess. Okay, Shift Up.
Yeah.
It was the highest selling game in US in April, which is big deal for them. They confirmed another game in production and a port for Stellar Blade, so obviously they're committing to their expansion in their future. And they're also one of the largest public fundings for a Korean game studio. So the Korean game development scene is, I think, very excited to have an international hit on their hands. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what they do in the future.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good placement.
Studio Zero. What do you think?
I think you can also probably put that. Well, fuck, I don't know. I guess you probably, because Studio Zero is metaphor, so obviously they have a Game of the Year nominee on their hands. A game that I think you can probably say was a bigger success than anticipated.
Yeah, probably.
But I don't know. I feel like they live safely in B tier.
Sure.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think. Well, here's the thing. I think that like delivering what is expected and having a great game and all that stuff, like it feels like what was expected. I will say that for me, there's a lot of artistic thematic value in Metaphor that I think raises them creatively, maybe up to A in my mind. Of like they really took.
This is a new studio?
Yeah, technically, yes. The only game they ever made before this was the Catherine port. This is their first major game. But it's the director of it's the director of Persona 3, 4, and 5, but Hashino. But as like a big dick swinging like new IP on the level of Persona, I think that this was a real coming out party for them. But not.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Not too much to talk about there. Tango, I don't know. I need to go in 4 minutes, so let's talk about Tango and Arrowhead real quick.
Tango, I don't even think we can place on here because Tango
we don't
is
know
like an interesting thing to.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't release any games; they just got shut down, but then they got brought back to life. So you can make a new tier called Resurrected for
true.
only Tango.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think I can add a tier right now, but yes. Actually, I probably can.
Yeah, you can. Just do tier above.
We'll make that. Oh wait, what did I do? Oh. Settings.
Fuck it, that's good enough.
Wait. Whoa. Resurrected.
Wicked.
Okay, great. Yep. And then Arrowhead.
Arrowhead, I think you go. I think. Oh fuck. It's either A or B. What do you think?
I think this is an A tier because they controlled the year. I mean, frankly, Helldivers 2 it's like the biggest success that Sony has ever seen. Totally unexpected. Yeah. Massive step up for that studio. Totally worth the like 10 years of investment they put into it. Obviously, they were committed to this, and it's nice to have a surprise hit. And a surprise hit that universally is like, everyone fucking loves this game. And Helldivers 2 is going to be around for a while, and now is like, Arrowhead is a studio that a lot of people know about now rather than just like a curiosity of a team that made a fucking Vita game that no one paid attention to. Yeah. They dominated the year. I mean, I think that is the biggest step up from not prominence to prominence that we've seen. Because even if it's like, we're talking about paper games or NetEase, like they had massively successful mobile games. We weren't aware of them. Helldivers was it was a fine game. It was like a curiosity on the Vita. And now Helldivers 2 is like the dominant multiplayer game of the entire year. So I think they really
that's fair.
They matured, Abram.
They matured, yes. They're a mature studio.
All right.
This is a good exercise. This is a really good exercise. My closing thought is that we should do this next year, and we should compare